will certainly have to scrape the cars first thing on Monday morning. The showers will be continuing to push their way into the north, primarily for northern Scotland, but we'll see also some snow showers for Northern Ireland, perhaps a few for the far west of Wales, southwest England, as well as skirting into Humberside and parts of Norfolk as well. Further inland, widespread blue skies, but feeling very cold, and the cold conditions continue right.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox,
That's right, we want to hear from you,
GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 6 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th of January. Today, global rallies and protests as Israel marks 100 days since the Hamas attacks on October the 7th. The war between the two sides is now the longest, and deadliest since Israel's establishment in 1948.
And meanwhile, tensions in the Red Sea remain very high. Lord Cameron has warned that the UK is ready to strike again if Houthi attacks on shipping vessels continue.
In Denmark, it's the end of an era as Queen Margrethe II abdicates today, making way for her son, soon to be King Frederick X.
And Aidan McGee is here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, everybody. Matters off the pitch dominated the day's programme of football, with Reading's match in the Championship abandoned against Port Vale due to fan protest, and we'll be looking ahead also to a big day of tennis and snooker. More later.
Aidan, thank you. And keeping you up to date with the weather throughout the programme, Jonathan Vautry.
If you thought it's been cold over recent days, be prepared for it to turn even colder as we see Arctic air sweep its way in from the north. Join me for the full forecast later on and the details of whether you will be seeing any snow.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, today, believe it or not, marks 100 days since the October 7th massacre that saw Hamas kill, I think, about 1,700 Israelis and take 240 as hostages.
And of course, since then, we've seen 3 months of war in Gaza, with heavy losses on both sides, including more than 23,000 casualties in Gaza, and that's according to the Hamas-run Health Ministry.
But despite worldwide calls for a ceasefire, there seems, at the moment, no end in sight.
And closer to home, well, here in Parliament anyway, Lord David Cameron has warned that Britain is prepared to carry out more strikes in Yemen to protect the future of international trade.
Yeah, the Foreign Secretary warned that if the Houthi rebels continue to target ships in the Red Sea, prices will go up in Britain and across the globe.
And he said the UK will always defend the freedom of navigation.
Well, joint British and American airstrikes targeted nearly 30 Houthi positions in the early hours of Friday morning, I beg your pardon, after weeks of the rebels' attacks on trade ships in the region.
Let's talk to local government editor from Conservative Home, Harry Phibbs, for more thoughts on that. It's so interesting, isn't it, it takes a bit of getting used to talking about David Cameron as, of course, Foreign Secretary. But he is, Lord Cameron now, the Foreign Secretary, and he has said that, we'll go on striking if they won't stop their attacks. What's your thoughts on hearing him say things like that?
Oh, I think he's. You can reckon that if David Cameron is supporting something, it's not a particularly hardline gung ho position. I think it's as he said in the Sunday Telegraph article. There's been warning after warning. There's been a great deal of hesitancy about it. But of course, we have no alternative. The idea that we can be isolationist and pretend this is nothing to do with us, when in the modern world a huge amount of our trade depends on shipping. And in any case, the idea that piracy should just be allowed to go unchallenged. Obviously, the Royal Navy have got a proud tradition of taking on piracy. So, if anything, I would say we've been too hesitant with the Houthis. And of course, we talk about the Houthis. Really, they're proxies for Iran, and the idea that we can try and appease Iran and the Ayatollahs. They call the United States the Great Satan and Israel the Little Satan, but they also call us the Middle Satan. So of course we need to stand up to them. The analogy about standing up to bullies, I know, is used a lot, but I think that is the only valid one. The idea that we don't want it to escalate. Let's not provoke them. I think is desperately naive. We absolutely need to take a strong line.
Yeah, well, a strong line with the Houthis then, which is what we're doing militarily. But I mean, there's no prospect of military action against Iran, is there? So that has to fall down to diplomacy.
Oh, I think what we can do is avoid strengthening Iran. So and certainly when they've got their surrogates there involved with, such as Hamas and the Houthis, then we need to be robust about that, robust about any expansionism. We need to be very strong in terms of our own security, because they've been trying to sponsor terrorist attacks around the world, and there's considerable evidence in Germany and elsewhere. We certainly shouldn't be giving them any financial assistance, and also I think that we should be encouraging this considerable resistance within Iran, understandably so, because it's the most vile, tyrannical regime, and a lot of women, for example, absolutely detest the oppression, and so I think we should do what we can to try and encourage resistance to the regime. I agree. We probably don't want to declare war on Iran, but in a way, that's the reality is that they are absolutely out to destroy us, and starting by recognizing that is probably a good realistic basis.
And briefly, your thoughts, because we'll be talking more about it in a moment, your thoughts on the fact that it is 100 days today since the October the 7th appalling atrocity that happened with the not Houthi,
Gaza.
With the
Hamas.
Hamas, that's it. With the Hamas suddenly attacking Israel. It's 100 days. You can barely believe it, can you?
It has gone, but it has gone past very fast. I do think that the Israelis have made astonishing progress, actually, in countering Hamas. Bear in mind, very difficult for them, given the tactics Hamas use of having civilian shields, forcing their civilians to stay with them rather than evacuating, using, of course, that network of tunnels. They're not a straightforward. They don't wear uniform, so I think that the idea of trying to eliminate Hamas while trying to minimize civilian casualties is an incredible challenge for Israel, which sometimes people use double standards. I mean, whenever you have a war, there will be civilian casualties. War is a horrible, messy thing, and I think in many ways the efforts that Israel has used, helped, I suppose, by the highly precise modern weaponry that's available, where they can take, in a block of flats, they can take out one individual flat, sort of on the fourth floor. I mean, there's that level of targeting. They've actually achieved quite a lot. But of course, the real challenge will be once they've completed the military operation and eliminated Hamas as a terrorist organization, then what happens next? And that obviously is going to be a very difficult challenge, not just for Israel, but for the rest of the Middle East and indeed the rest of the world.
OK, Harry, for now, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's talk to Miri Aysin from the International Institute for Counter-Terrorism at Reichman University in Israel. Appreciate your time this morning. Harry Phibbs there saying Israel's made astonishing progress in the last 100 days. I would argue that perhaps over the last awful 100 days, Israel's no closer to destroying Hamas than it was on October the 8th.
So I'm going to argue with that one there, Stephen, because we're certainly that much closer. We need to differentiate between what the Hamas is. When it comes to their military capabilities, the Israeli Defense Forces have been systematically destroying the terror capabilities, the underground subterranean tunnels, the cache of weapons, the rockets, the mortars, the suicide drones, the UAVs, the production facilities. They're so widespread. We've been systematically destroying those in the northern Gaza Strip. In the northern Gaza Strip, it doesn't mean that you destroy everything, but you have gotten to the stage where what they're doing now is just that small amount of pop out of a tunnel. They built so many, they're still there, but pop out of a tunnel, you see an apartment building, you say, why is that destroyed? The above ground was booby trapped. The underground is the tunneling. the hostages themselves were held both in the northern Gaza Strip and in the central and the south. You've been speaking about 100 days of war. From the beginning, we've all said this is a long war. Hamas used 2 million people as their human shields. They've used such an extensive underground subterranean system as their own defense for themselves. They're using the hostages as the bargaining chips. And when you take those together, are systematic, going after both the capabilities and the infrastructure and the facilities and the weaponry, we're way further than we were October 7th or 8th. And you're absolutely right, there's still a lot of work in front of us.
Yeah, I mean, it's a very sad day to sort of think that it's 100 days of this. What are your thoughts, particularly about the hostages who are still inside Gaza in Hamas hands?
So while you were showing the pictures of the destruction in the Gaza Strip, that Hamas built this entire urban community to be booby-trapped, and the only way to get against them is to do that kind of destruction of those above-ground booby traps. Right now, I'd love it if you would show the pictures of the hostages, of what we can say right now at this stage are over 250 Israeli citizens, 9-month baby who's supposed to be a year pretty soon, an 87-year-old Holocaust survivor. And when we're talking about the 250 people who were taken on October 7th, that we still don't know exactly who was taken, what their situation is, are they alive, are they dead? Were they taken into these underground systems that you're showing right now? Where are they? How are they? Hamas have never said. It is a terror organization. In Israel right now, 100 days of war is 100 days for these 146 families. It's trying to know what their loved ones are like, but it's for every single one of us. This could have happened to you, to me, to anybody. The Hamas terrorists came into our towns, villages, pillaged, tortured, raped, and took hostages, killing the hostages' family in front of the hostages' eyes. 100 days like that in these tunnels in captivity. Inside Israel, we're not in a situation of let's just destroy Hamas. We're in a situation of bring our citizens home, bring our people home. There are more than a dozen women who have been held in captivity for 100 days. And when we talk about it, we don't like to describe what that means. I feel that when Israel put on trial for the most ridiculous, heinous, impossible idea in The Hague right now, just the idea of that, the description of the Israeli defenders as they were talking about these hostages. So I don't have a daughter who's a hostage, but I know people who have daughters my age. I have a daughter who's 22, and there are 22-year-old women who have been held hostage for 100 days, and their crime is that they're Israeli and they were taken from their homes. How about your grandfather or your husband or your child? We're talking about an impossible situation, and it affects every Israeli.
As you say, it is an impossible situation, and as much as, I mean, you're focusing on those hostages, and look, and understandably so. I mean, we were talking to the sister of a hostage yesterday, and to try to imagine what they're going through is frankly impossible. And yet, with all this, as we look back over 100 days, you've also got to look to the future and what they call a sort of an exit strategy and all the rest of it. How do you even begin to look at what could happen over the next year or so? Actually, when you look at that destruction in Gaza, which you say, well, look, it's been necessary because of how Hamas operates, because of the booby traps and all the rest of it. But you can't leave it in that state, can you? Because all that's going to do is reinforce the Hamas ideology, which is what you want to get rid of. So it's very difficult to know how there is any sort of solution to this which will be helpful to either side.
Let's go forward step by step. Having Hamas as a terror organization that can do the kind of modus operandi, the kind of action that was done on October 7th, you, me, the entire world, we don't want that kind of success to be the thing that is the message to the world. When we talk about the radicalization, can I be almost cynical on such an early Sunday morning? I think that they were pretty radicalized already, dehumanizing the Israeli side to such a degree that they did the attack of October 7th. That's not something that is going to be worse after October 7th. I kind of thought that they hit bottom there. And I don't mean to be cynical about it, but I want to go forward. We need to change the equation. It means that a terror entity cannot rule over an arena. That means both destroying the terror capabilities and not Israel, not even the international community, but local voices that are not the extremist Hamas voices trying to run day-to-day life. For a moment, I don't think that that's easy. That radicalization is something that was there before. It's what brought about October 7th, not just the planning of the attack, but thousands of terrorists coming into Israel, doing the most horrific, barbaric attacks. They were already pretty radicalized before. And again, I'm kind of being sarcastic, which I shouldn't be about. I think that as we go forward, we need to change that equation, that there are no safe havens for arenas that allow this kind of radicalized education system. Let the Palestinians themselves, and there are other voices, talk about a different kind of education, focusing not on the destruction of Israel, but on their own future, on having a better future for their children. I hope it for them. In my destroying Hamas capabilities, I truly believe that we are trying to give a better future for the mothers, for the children, for the Gazans who are in the Gaza Strip. Let those 2 million people have a better future than the one that Hamas was offering and still says in trying to destroy Israel and in doing such an attack again and again.
Mary Ison, really good to talk to you this morning.
Thank you very much. 100 days since that terrible, terrible attack on October the 7th. Let's have a look now at some other stories that are coming into the newsroom. Around 150 migrants have been intercepted in the Channel, ending the extended pause in crossings. They're the first to make the treacherous journey since the 16th of December. And that's the longest period without any migrant arrivals for almost 4 years. It's probably down to bad weather. That's what they think has prevented more people from crossing the Channel in the last few weeks.
A historic election in Taiwan overnight, and voters have chosen pro-sovereignty candidate William Lau as their new president, cementing a desire to remain independent from China. It marks the third term for the pro-sovereignty Democratic Progressive Party, which has governed Taiwan for the last 8 years. Of course, that's angered Beijing, which issued a statement after the results insisting Taiwan is part of China.
And a League One football match was abandoned last night after around 1,000 Reading home fans invaded the pitch. The start of the game was interrupted for 3 minutes when tennis balls were thrown onto the pitch, and the ref then had to take players off after 16 minutes as home fans took to the field, with some letting off flares. Right, it's 18 minutes past 6. Now, this is fascinating, because when we talk about royals, it's usually our royal family, isn't it?
Well, they are the royals, aren't they?
They are the royals, yes. And we're going to talk now about other royals, the ones in Denmark, because history is going to be made later, when Denmark's longest-serving head of state, the Queen, will abdicate, handing the throne to her son.
Yes, Queen Margrethe II is the first Danish monarch in 900 years to abdicate. 51 years to the day since coming to the throne.
Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker will tell you more.
I've decided that now is the right time. On the 14th of January 2024, 52 years after I succeeded my beloved father, I will step down as Queen of Denmark.
Denmark's 83-year-old Queen's shock announcement took millions of Danes by surprise. For the first time in 900 years of Danish history, the monarch will abdicate after half a century as the country's longest-serving head of state. Queen Margrethe and Queen Elizabeth were distant cousins, both descending from Queen Victoria. And in 2022, she welcomed our future queen, Princess Catherine, to the royal palace, who was on a fact-finding mission for her early years' work.
It's wonderful to see them when it's on stage and to see them using the costumes and the scenery that I've designed.
Queen Margaret is admired for her tactile and creative personality.
We really like what she stands for, how she represents Denmark. It's really nice to see that it goes beyond the politics and so on.
But recent years have not been smooth sailing. Her Majesty removed the Prince and Princess titles from her grandchildren born to her second son. She hoped it would help them shape their own lives without the pressure of royal titles. But the spare wasn't happy. Prince Joachim publicly spoke out against his mother's decision. Remind you of anyone? It's not just Prince Harry who's talked about family dramas. In February, the Queen had extensive surgery on her back. Her long period of recovery meant her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik, took on her duties. Today, he does so permanently as Denmark's new king. His wife and new queen, Australian-born Princess Mary, has thrilled Aussies down under.
What a great ambassador for Australia.
Proud of her. Yeah,
Terrific,
it's lovely.
terrific news.
She deserves it. She's lovely.
She carries herself extremely well. I'm very proud. I'm very excited. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I think she'll make a great queen.
At 18, Prince Christian will become Denmark's heir to the throne, taking over his father's role as the Crown Prince. Prince Frederik will ascend the throne this afternoon after his mother signs a declaration of her abdication. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, let's talk to... Well, it's fascinating,
It's
isn't
fascinating. They're obviously, and they're an incredibly good-looking family. But she, but Queen Margrethe didn't tell anyone she was going to abdicate until she read it out in her Christmas speech. She must have done that secretly so that she wouldn't be talked out of it.
Maybe so. Maybe so. Let's talk to former butler to the King, or Prince Charles as he was then, Grant Harrell. Good to see you, Grant, as always. Now, as Anne says, it is absolutely fascinating, but we also have to bear in mind the differences. It is a very different royal family to ours, isn't it, in many respects?
Absolutely. Good morning, and good morning, Stephen. You're quite right. It's a very different royal family. It's got the same kind of constitutional powers. Obviously, our late Queen, their present Queen, advises the minister. She signs bills, but she doesn't actually get involved in the actual running of the country. It's kind of similar to the UK, but it is different because they're kind of seen as more. I want to say more with the people. Now, obviously, our royal family's changed a lot in recent years, where I think with Queen Margrethe, you've seen scenes of her where she kind of walks the streets on her own. But then, if I can say, our Princess of Wales does some quite similar. So the royal family, our royal family are very much catching up with theirs. And also, budget-wise is very different. You know, our royal family, for the taxpayers, is over 87 million. Their royal family is about 13 million. So it's very different. It's very different. But equally, as Anne mentioned, it's fascinating because this coronation, I should also mention, is not like the coronation of King Charles. It's quite simply the Queen abdicates and the Prime Minister announces Prince Frederik as the new King Frederick X and Queen Mary. So there's no kind of big celebrate or anything. It's very different to the way that we do things.
The fact that she sort of took her own decision and then announced it herself without telling anyone else about abdicating sort of gives you the idea that maybe our Queen, Elizabeth, once upon a time did sort of think about abdication but rejected the idea.
You know, I think it's one of those. I've been thinking about that because this Queen we're talking about, she's 83 years old. She's a little bit younger than our late Queen. And as we've heard recently about our late Queen, very much kind of, well, we saw what our late Queen did. I mean, she even saw her Prime Minister the day before she died. She took duty really seriously. But there was always that question, wasn't there? Would she have abdicated in favour of her son, and obviously decided that that was not what she wanted to do? What I'm discovering from European royal families, it's not that unusual for the monarchs to abdicate in favour of their children when they get to a certain age. And I think, again, as you mentioned, Queen Margrethe has been suffering a little bit with health. Maybe she feels that she's not able to fulfil that role any longer, and that's why she's passed it on to her son. But as I've said before, I don't ever see our royal family kind of fall on that. I've been asked many times over if I think that the king would ever abdicate in favour of his son. I just don't think it will happen. And also, the only time we've had an abdication was obviously King Edward VIII, and that was over love over 70 years ago.
Well, indeed, yeah. Look, Grant, as always, it's good to see you. Thanks very much indeed. I don't like abdication.
No, but
Yeah,
I mean they're a very different, as Grant was saying. That they're a different royal family. They, you know, they travel on the bus. And
She's always seen as being quite eccentric.
Yes.
You know, there's some pictures around today showing her in the most weird and wonderful outfits.
Yeah.
Very unlike our late Queen, but you know, each to their own, as far as that goes.
It just the way that the Danish royal family conduct themselves, the way they are very much more integrated into ordinary life. Maybe it's just not such a big deal for her to actually abdicate in favour of her son.
It's the first time in 900 years.
Yeah, exactly. That's breaking history, isn't it?
It is, yeah. Well, interesting. I was going to say we'd bring you coverage of the ceremony, but I mean it's literally just an announcement.
Yeah.
Which seems very odd to us. We like the pomp and pageantry, don't we?
Yeah, not half. I don't think the Queen Margrethe had much of a balcony there, did she?
No,
we have a lovely wide balcony that takes everybody.
Looks a bit drab.
It did look a bit, yeah,
But
that's because they're budget conscious, aren't they? They don't have the sort of money that our royal family does.
Well, that sparks a whole other conversation.
Yes, it does, doesn't it?
OK, let's see what the weather's going to do. Is it going to be drab for you today? Is it going to be snowy? Jonathan's got the details.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight. A widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
Well, I wonder whether you'll get... Actually, we'll talk about that in a few minutes. What is going on with the weather with journalist Nathan Rao? That's coming up next. Don't go away.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
It's 6:30. Good morning. You're watching and listening to Breakfast with Stephen and Anne. Let's just remind you of the top stories today.
Global rallies and protests as Israel marks 100 days since Hamas's attack on them on October the 7th. The war between the two sides is now the longest and deadliest since Israel's establishment in 1948.
Meanwhile, tensions in the Red Sea are still high. Lord Cameron has warned the UK is ready to strike again if Houthi attacks on shipping vessels continue.
And in Denmark, it's the end of an era as Queen Margrethe II abdicates today, making way for her son, who will soon be King Frederick X.
All right, we are British, so let's talk about the weather. Nathan Rao is here. Good morning to you.
Good morning.
Now, I have to confess, I was sort of expecting snow across the country this week.
Yeah, you were thinking you were going to be digging your way into the office.
Which hasn't happened.
No, it hasn't.
But will it happen this week?
Right, it is very interesting. The first thing to say is, as we were looking at Jonathan talking about the Met Office's forecast, is that big swathe of blue Arctic air coming over the country this week, or this weekend. It is going to start feeling colder through the weekend. Not you know, we're not talking minus 20, but everyone is going to feel cold.
Which weekend? Not this weekend, next weekend.
This weekend.
Oh,
now.
right,
So
now.
Through the weekend, through today, through Sunday.
There's no doubt it felt colder this morning, didn't it?
Yeah.
Did it?
Oh, I
didn't
think
notice.
so.
Yes.
To be fair.
Well,
Too tired.
Too tired, yeah.
Now, the interesting thing is that through the last week, we've all been looking at snow and where it's going to hit. There is a snow warning out for Scotland this weekend, for the north of Scotland. They could see quite a bit up there, and with some strong winds, there will be some blizzards. But what the Met Office and other meteorologists have been looking at is the possibility of snow elsewhere this week. And 2 days ago, we were all looking at it going, oh, goodness, you know, grab onto this, it's coming. Now it seems to have dodged in the other direction a little bit, which quite often happens.
Because that's not what the front page of the Star is saying. They're saying, brace yourself for the big freeze.
Well, in their defence, it is changing by the day. Now, if you had looked at the weather forecasts yesterday morning or even the day before, the evening, you would have seen that there was a possibility of snow across northern England and central England and possibly to the south. Now, that could still happen because what we're looking at is cold air over the UK and low pressure carrying moisture coming in from the west. And it's where that low pressure goes that dictates where we get snow. Now, a couple of days ago, it was sort of looking a bit further north. Now it's looking a bit further south. So I think the message is it's going to be a very cold week. We can say that with some certainty. And if you're in Scotland, you're going to get snow. And if you're elsewhere, down the west coast of the UK, I think we're probably going to see some flurries there. And you may see some flurries in the north. And I might be sat in here 2 days ago with the low pressure back up to the north talking about getting snow shovels out again, or I might not. But it really does show that at this time of year, it's so difficult, even with the Met Office's, you know, supercomputer that does trillions and trillions of calculations every second. It's really hard to pin down until a day before where it's going. So the story now is it's going to be cold and wrap up, but you might not see as much snow as we thought you might a couple of days ago.
But that means plenty of ice either which way, which is treacherous by itself.
Yeah, what about temperatures?
Yeah, I mean...
minus.
Yeah, -4 they're talking about, which isn't actually that low. I mean, the record is minus 27.2, so we're quite a bit away off that. That was in 1995. At -4, I think in the Highlands of the North you get a bit lower than -4. And I think certainly in London with the wind chill and the rest of the country, it's going to feel very cold. And there is a UK Health Security Agency health alert out for cold weather, for prolonged cold weather. So I think the story now is it's going to be a very, very cold week. And if you're lucky and you like it, you might get some snow. But and if you're in Scotland, you'll get some snow. But elsewhere, watch out, you might, or you might not.
That's really good. Thank you.
Have I covered all bases there? I mean, no one's going to...
Yeah, you've done everything. I'll tell you what, did we get 1995, -27?
Yeah, I think...
That's horrific for this country. I've been in -34 before, and it hurt to breathe.
Yes, it's really,
so
really
cold.
And have you seen that thing they do with if you take boiling water and throw it in the air, it freezes? It's amazing, isn't it?
Actually, a lot of people were doing that in those days, weren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, but, no, I don't want
that here, though.
No, thank you.
I keep thinking of those poor people who've just been, you know, lost...
flooded.
Through the floods, and they still are trying to clear up floodwater in their homes, and then it's going to freeze. If it's -4 where they are, how do you cope with that?
Yeah, it's horrible, actually. All right, Nathan, thank you very much indeed. Good to see you. Let's see what Aidan has got for us sports-wise this morning. Should we talk about Reading?
Yeah, we often talk about the Royals on this programme, but it's a different kind of Royals. It's Reading FC, that's the nickname of the club, and we saw a game abandoned yesterday.
Yeah.
And in League One, we don't often talk about clubs that low down, so it's good to shine a light on what's been going on there, because they're in the bottom four of League One. They've really sunk like a stone in the last few years. In the 16th minute, you can see the pictures there for the benefit of our radio listeners. It's a protest against the Chinese owner, Dai Yong, and he's been at the club since 2017. It initially started yesterday with some tennis balls being thrown on the pitch. We then saw a larger group of supporters go onto the pitch, and they initially thought there'd be a protest, and the Port Vale fans who travelled down from Stoke-on-Trent to see their team play were obviously annoyed because they paid a lot of money to get there, and eventually, after 16 minutes with the players brought off the pitch by the referee Ross Joyce, we thought we'd see a resumption of play, but the fans just wouldn't move. They wouldn't be moved by anybody. PA announcements, the referee, players and the management teams requested that they leave the pitch to resume the play. It didn't happen. They just stayed and stayed. And don't forget, this isn't just about yesterday. This is about several years of mismanagement of this club. They protested outside Parliament last month. This is not a club, Anne. There have been lots of cutbacks. Yeah, I mean that's the kind of stuff we would talk about to give somebody an idea of what's going on in the here and now. I mean, but they've cut back on meals at the training ground. The caterers walked out on January the 5th. The players don't stay in overnight hotels away from home. Now, that may sound as if, OK, prima donna footballers, mollycoddled, whatever. That never happens. And if you go to away games, some clubs stay in a hotel. Manchester City stay in a hotel before home games. So that's an integral part of a player's preparation. That's been cut. If the season ended tomorrow, they would get relegated to the bottom tier. Reading is a club I know well. I've covered them many, many times over the last 25 years. I don't recall them being in the bottom tier since probably the 60s, I wouldn't have thought. John Medeski used to run it. We used to see Cilla Black in the crowd, didn't we?
Right.
And there was a well-run...
There was Medeski Stadium, was there?
Yeah, that's where they went to. 1998, they moved in there. It's a very progressive club. They've largely been on the up since the 90s, notwithstanding the last 5-6 years. But this owner took over in 2017 and they got to the playoff final that year. Then he bought the club and they steadily sort of sunk like a stone. But, yeah, 16 minutes of play yesterday. We think it's going to be replayed in midweek. We don't know whether it's going to be behind closed doors. But it started with tennis balls being thrown on the pitch and the fans just wouldn't leave yesterday. And so it's a sorry state. It's where owners have come in, they've seen a club that looks profitable, it hasn't worked out, and they've withdrawn all their resources. And because the owners are not based in this country, it's difficult to gain contact with them and accountability. And as I say, this is not a fan base which is given to being objectionable or causing any kind of trouble. It's a family club who built their fan base locally in a kind of non-football area. And you're more likely to see mums, dads, kids there, and they've had enough. They've just gone to the pitch, and I think 1,000 in total took to the pitch. I think there was 400 left by the end, and they want answers from the club. The manager said, I understand why they've done it, but we would rather have gone to the pitch and tried to win the game. The club has warned of financial sanctions and banning orders as well, which I wasn't...
That will make things worse.
Well, I antagonise them a little bit, and you've got to have you've got to read the room sometimes. And I suppose the people on the ground on the day probably don't have much contact with the owners either, so they're kind of making decisions on the hop. But it's a sad state of affairs because Reading Football Club is big enough to not be in the position that they're in. But I guess if you're turning up every week, paying your money, and you're watching 6 years of successive... I mean, they've had about 4 points deductions, 4 this season, 4 points this season, and they've not paid the tax bills month to month. They are still paying their players, but there are cutbacks all over the club. Staff all over the place are being let go, and that's inhibiting the coach's ability to do it.
It's bad management, that is, isn't it?
Yeah. Terrible. And it shouldn't happen to a club that big.
No.
It's easy to forget, Anne, how important these clubs are to their community. Reading's not a small town. It's quite a big town. It's somewhere which you probably would apply to city status if it hasn't already. It's big enough, and it's right on the edge of London. It should be a successful club.
Aidan, on that note, we should leave it there. We'll look at the Premier League.
Sorry, it was so down.
No.
It's fascinating.
We'll talk up next time because you can tell us all about Novak Djokovic and what he's been saying too.
Still to come, though, is John Burko a traitor? We'll tell you more in Headline Makers. That's coming up next.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Put your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
OK, it's 6:41. Let's have a look at some of the newspapers for you this morning. We'll start with the Times. It says a CBE was given to Paula Venables, formerly of the Post Office, despite the Horizon IT scandal. Well, we sort of know that already. We need to look at that in a bit more detail.
Well, meanwhile, the Mail on Sunday leads with a Jamaican gangster avoiding deportation after a mutiny by airline passengers.
The Sunday Mirror has 100 days since the start of the war in Gaza.
The Sunday Express focuses on a minister calling for post office chiefs behind the scandal to be jailed.
Sunday Telegraph has the Defence Secretary warning Iran the world is running out of patience.
And joining us now to go through some of the day's headlines and all the stories inside too, writer and columnist Emma Wolfe and showbiz reporter Stephanie Tecci. Lovely to see you both. Emma, let's start with the Post Office, because every day it seems to get worse.
Yeah. So the Post Office scandal rumbles on, and I think many people feel rightly so. You know, there's just so much to unpack here. And this is Kevin Hollinrake, who was last night on Any Questions, or maybe it was Friday night, saying that actually he's a top Tory minister, and he's been quite vocal on this. He's been saying that guilty parties in this scandal should actually face jail. He says people must be held to account. And he thinks that prison...
Though? Yes, I don't know what they would be charged with, really.
For
wrongful imprisonment.
He says, it seems to me that actions have been taken that were designed to pervert the course of justice, and that is an incredibly serious charge. There's a lot of evidence now that Horizon, the system, that people knew about the problems within the system, that wasn't reported, that ministers didn't do their jobs properly. Ed Davey we've seen his car crash interview the other day, in which his non-apology apology, he has refused to say sorry, just to say sorry. He's refused to take responsibility. He says, I deeply regret that I was lied to, which is not an apology. He says, my heart goes out to the people that suffered. That is not an apology.
Well, he could apologise without taking responsibility. I can understand him say... I can understand a situation where he says, well, I was not presented with this information. I was not aware. You can still say sorry.
Yes, you can.
You can still say sorry. You can still say... I'm sorry, and I was not across this because I couldn't be across it because I'm a minister. I was, top minister. I couldn't be across everything. Whatever you do, you can just say the word. And he was pressed, I think, 10 times just to say the words "I'm sorry." I wouldn't do it, and I think that's offensive to those who suffered.
I do as well, but I think the damage has already been done to him without him even saying sorry. So I think he's kind of damned if he does, damned if he doesn't, and he is trying to do a bit of damage control, but it's a little too late. But the thing with this scandal, I just can't believe in my head that it's taken a drama in order for this to be taken seriously. For years, people have been talking about this, and it kind of annoys me when these ministers are coming out, because I'm like, you probably knew about this, but now it's on the front page pages and the floodgates of the public anger is out there, that's when everyone wants to
I mean,
put
they
their
did know
two-pence
about
worth.
it. They did know about it.
It wasn't sexy enough. It wasn't important enough. It was just, you know, sub-postmasters and sub-postmistresses that run our post offices up and down our country in small villages and towns all over the UK. That wasn't sexy enough. You know, people didn't really bother. And as you say, Steph, it took the TV drama.
Yeah.
Which, in a way, is really heartening that people have connected so kind of closely with those individual stories. But, yeah, in a way, it's depressing that we don't have a kind of democratic route to righting these wrongs.
I think it's quite depressing, actually. But I mean, it's the case, isn't it? Politicians respond when there's public pressure.
And there really is public pressure.
There, they don't.
Well, let's see if Ed Davies survives this year, because there's a lot of anger.
Isn't he tainted goods already?
He's very tainted. There's talk in his constituency that a former sub-postmistress might run as an independent. Fantastic.
Well, if that's the case, I don't fancy his chances.
I don't. I really don't. I doubt whether, you know, let's see if he makes it to the election. But I think he's only got a slim majority as well. So.
OK, let's have a look at Queen Margaretta II in her last day.
Oh, my gosh. I always get a bit emotional when a queen steps down. I think there's just so much power with the Queen. But she is... I like kings too, but queens are extra special to me. But she is abdicating the throne after 52 years, and she's going to be handing it over to her son, Crown Prince Frederick. I think it's a very interesting move from her. I think it's good that she's still going to be alive to kind of oversee the monarchy, and I think this is what she wants to do, to put the wheels in motion, to see that everything still runs smoothly. He's not quite a squeaky clean character.
Is he not?
No, he's a bit of a party boy, and in November there was this big furore that he was having an affair with a Mexican socialite. So I do think a lot of the papers have been saying that this is a bid to save his marriage and to present a more homely image for the monarchy. So
he's married to Princess Mary.
Yes. And she's got roots in Scotland, actually.
And she's very popular.
She is. She's like a Kate. Like, she doesn't put a foot wrong. But I think since this whole scandal of the affair that's come out, apparent affair, she hasn't seemed very happy.
Put your socks up, King Frederick the 22nd, or whatever he is.
But there's not going to be all the pageantry that we had with King Charles's coronation. It's going to be quite a simple affair. It's not even going to be televised. So the Danish are kind of keeping it very simple and sophisticated.
But she's been quite magical. I mean, as Stephen was saying earlier, she's sort of known for being a bit eccentric. But I don't know whether he'll have cast that same magic.
No.
But good for her. I mean, one hopes that she can... I mean, she's getting older. And one hopes she can have a few years of just... you know, enjoying her life. And just maybe, obviously, she's still going to be in the public eye. And she'll be overseeing, as you say, her son, the king's movements. But, yeah, I mean, I hope she can put her slippers on and just
it's the one
kick back a little bit.
See, I don't like abdications, but I can see that it's... You know,
but dying in harness must be exhausting. I mean, our Queen went on right until the very last day.
I know, and you wouldn't sort of wish that on anybody.
No.
We all look forward to retiring at some point.
Definitely, even if you're royalty.
Yeah. Emma, let's have a look at the Mail on Sunday, where it looks like our very own Nigel Farage may try to get into the Commons again.
For the 8th time, Well, we know that Reform are very much on manoeuvres. We know he's the honorary president, so Nigel, it looks like he may, or he would do well if he stood in Clacton, which is one of those very kind of UKIP
Is that a seat
seats.
that's a seat where, if he did stand, his chances would be best?
Would be best, yeah. So it's currently held by Giles Watling, who's obviously a Tory MP. This would be Farage's 8th attempt. Farage is polling around 37% there. Conservatives and Tories on around 23%.
Ooh, interesting.
They're much behind.
Labour.
Sorry, Conservatives and Labour are neck and neck, around 23%.
Right,
I think the Tories are slightly behind. But Richard Tice, head of Reform, has been saying he's expecting quite a lot of Tory MPs to cross the floor. He's hoping up to 10 MPs will cross the floor. And there's a sense this week,
especially... Cross the floor to where?
To Reform.
To Reform.
Yeah. But there's a sense, well, the problem, of course, is they know their chances are incredibly slim. I mean, their chances of even getting one MP because of our electoral system, because of the two-party system. But there's a sense that this week, the Rwanda bill is key. You know, how the government responds to that, how that goes, is going to decide a lot of Tory voters, Tory MPs. And, of course, lots of them know they're going to be voted out at the next election. So they may well feel that reform is a better option for them.
It's going to be very interesting to see, especially if there are defections to reform. So if we end up with some reform MPs in the House before the election is called, then that changes the dynamic quite a lot.
It does.
Clacton wouldn't be a by-election; it would be part of the general election.
Yeah, so he would be standing in wherever it is, autumn or even next spring, next January. But I think it must be by the end of this year. But yeah, no, I mean, in terms of reform, it's just where do people who just feel they cannot vote Conservative again, but are Conservative in their heart, where will those votes go?
The rise of reform has been quite interesting because for so long in this country it's either Conservatives or Labour and that's it. And now that there's this third party which is steadily building up steam, I think it's making like people who are not happy with the Conservatives think actually there is a way out finally in this country of another party which actually may deliver.
Yeah, and they've gone from almost nothing to about 10, I mean between 9 and 11% depending on the polls that you look at, but they've really had an amazing start. And as you say, it may be the beginning. Yeah, and it's a mishmash of things, isn't it? It's lots of issues.
I mean, I suppose if you looked at those European elections where the Brexit Party, won more than any other party standing, and I thought that was fascinating at the time, whether we could see that in effect repeated.
But all of these issues are swirling around. OK, Brexit, has it been done? Has it not been done? Has it been a success? But also the small boats, the immigration thing. These are major issues on the doorstep. And these are things that reform is addressing.
It's fascinating thinking that if Nigel did get in as an MP, even if he was the only one, would he be able to extract any power at all with whichever party then wins? I mean, would anyone give him a job in cabinet or anything like that?
Well, let's see. And Labour as well, this rumour swirling around, and Richard Tice has said he would possibly step aside for Nigel. So would that make a big difference? Look at Nigel Farage. He's such a crowd puller. We've all seen the response here, but remember when he turned up at the Conservative Party conference? Yeah. He was absolutely mobbed. So if he was head of reform, that could change things as well. But he hasn't declared his...
Makes it interesting,
he hasn't declared his hand yet.
Yeah. Remaining very coy.
Should we have a look at some Botox?
Botox, ooh, I like that. Well, Botox and fillers in men have gone up by 70%. I know usually there's 70%, and usually there's been this kind of taboo about men going for beauty treatments, but they made up for a quarter of injectable treatments last year. And I think it's what I was reading in Expresses, they're saying that they're looking at a lot of younger celebrities. One surgeon was saying that he gets men coming in with pictures of people like Liam Payne saying they want his kind of youthful looks, and I just find it quite interesting now. I think with social media pressure, like women, we've had this for years, so we've kind of got used to it, but I think men are starting to come under pressure now.
It's even worse.
Yeah.
Do you know what? And a lot of online is filtered and airbrushed.
Yeah.
It's not even reality when they show a picture and they say that, and you say, but that's been heavily filtered.
Do you know, when I left the building yesterday, there was someone having a photo shoot just outside, and it'll be an influencer, as they call themselves. I mean, I don't know. She might work in Tesco's or whatever, but online she's an influencer or whatever. She wasn't anyone you'd know. Having a photo shoot, and I can tell you, she may look great on camera.
Yeah.
In reality, she was so wrong.
Yeah.
It was a trout pout like I've never seen, and made up to the nines, but her lips were literally out here. It was just like, and you just think, what on earth is that? And how a young girl's looking at that, going, I want to look like that.
Yes, they are. Yes, they are.
And it's going to
There's a heavy makeup look. I don't know what, you've probably got a proper term for it, Steph.
Yeah.
But that whole thing, that the look has changed. Yeah. But in reality, people want to look like that. In reality, remember it used to be.
She looked like a monster off Doctor Who.
But makeup used to be a thing.
It was that bad. It was awful. It was a proper. I had to sort of walk past, and I literally had to turn around and go, am I really seeing that?
You see, the lines are getting blurred between reality and how people want to look on social media, and that kind of hype and adoration they're getting for looking a certain way now. But I'm just scared how these people are going to be looking at 70. I think we're just going to have a generation of plastic. and Botox. But at the same time, I think people need to do what makes them happy. And I think if tweakments is what's going to make someone feel more confident, go ahead.
The trouble is, I mean, there are reports that very young children, under 10, are asking for certain treatments, beauty
it is a form of body dysmorphia. This is not normal. And when I see cases like Katie Price, who has undergone horrific surgery again and again and spent thousands on it and changed her body beyond all recognition.
Well,
and
the boobs are up, then they're down again, then they're up again.
And to me, that is, I think that the surgeon should be prosecuted for even operating on this woman. I think it's getting to the stage with certain people and certain celebrities where, you know, it's simply not, this is a health issue. This is a mental health issue.
Yes, it is.
As well as being, you know, physically extraordinary, as you say.
I mean, I guess we haven't been doing it long enough for us to know what that person is going to look like when they're 70.
Gosh, I think it'd be quite scary, to be honest.
Well, we know what they're going to look like because the rest of the body ages. I mean, one's neck, sadly, one's neck and one's hands keep going.
Oh, no,
and then
you can have everything lifted.
Everything goes down, and then your face is just tightened and tightened and tightened. It's really scary.
Yeah, I don't think it's healthy.
I just think there needs to be more investment in body confidence.
Body confidence.
Body confidence.
We've got to leave it there. Stephanie, Emma, thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Here's the weather.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today. It brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight, a widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
A brighter outlook with Box Solar, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 7 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th of January. Today, global rallies and protests as Israel marks 100 days since the Hamas attack on October the 7th. The war between the two sides is now the longest and deadliest since Israel's establishment in 1948.
Meanwhile, tensions in the Red Sea remain high. Lord Cameron has warned that the UK is ready to strike again if Houthi attacks on shipping vessels go on. Olivia Utley has the latest for us.
Britain is prepared to strike again, but are the public behind the government on this? Find out more with me just after 7 o'clock.
In Denmark, it's the end of an era as Queen Margrethe abdicates today, making way for her son, who will be King Frederick X.
And Aidan McGee is here with your sport.
Yes, indeed. Good morning, everybody. In the Premier League, Manchester City reaffirmed their title credentials with a dramatic win at Newcastle United. And we'll be finding out why Novak Djokovic felt he was the villain of the world. The Australian Open is underway today. More on that later on.
Aidan, thank you. Just after 7:30, we're going to be talking about the biggest stories making headlines today with the wonderful Stephanie Tecci and Emma Wolfe.
And let's find out about your weather because Jonathan Vautry is on standby for you.
If you thought it's been cold over recent days, be prepared for it to turn even colder as we see Arctic air sweep its way in from the north. Join me for the full forecast later on and the details of whether you will be seeing any snow.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
I sort of feel like I need to apologise.
Clearly.
Yes, Jane's been in touch. Hi, Jane. She says, as Stephen lost his razor, most unlike him to be on air with a 5 o'clock shadow.
He's tired, poor lad.
Do you know what? It's a dreadful excuse, actually, isn't it? But I am sort of on day 11 of getting up at 3. I have had one day off. Last Monday I had off. And I've reached a point where I am actually so tired that this morning, well, last night when I normally sort of have a wash and everything, I was just like, I cannot be bothered.
I don't blame you. I mean, it's very tiring. Anyone who's ever done shift work will completely sympathise with you.
So I'm sorry. I know it is a bit lax, but as disappointed as you may be, Jay, have no fear because my mother will be livid.
Oh, is she watching?
Probably. She's probably tuning before she goes to church this
Oh,
morning.
dear.
And
Standards are slipping.
She will be furious, so I will get a proper dressing down at some point, Jane. So I do apologise. I will try and get back on my game. I should be back on Thursday, so I'll be looking more like me by
Need a nice rest. Except you've got dog training today, haven't you?
Dog training this afternoon at 2 o'clock.
Yeah. So you've got to stay awake for that.
Oh, that'll be tiring. Fun, though.
And just on the subject of the Danish abdication of Queen Margrethe, John from Leicester, morning John, says, to show solidarity with our European neighbours, I shall celebrate their new king today by having some Danish bacon.
Ah, well, there you go.
Nice to see you take it that seriously. That's good. Lovely. Yeah, King Frederick X.
The 10th. That's clearly a popular name.
What point he becomes king?
Yes, what time of day, I don't know.
No.
Was they just sort of announce it? There's no big ceremony or anything, which seems a little odd to us, but there you go. It's just the way they do it over there. Look, our main news today, and it's an awful anniversary. It's 100 days since the October the 7th massacre that saw Hamas kill 1,200 Israelis and take 240 hostages.
And some of them are still hostages. And since then, we've seen 3 months of war in Gaza with heavy losses on both sides, including, they reckon, something like 24,000 casualties in Gaza. That is a figure given out by the Hamas-run health ministry.
Despite worldwide calls for a ceasefire, they're not universal calls for a ceasefire, it has to be said, but at the moment, at least, there's no end in sight, though thousands are expected to attend a rally in London this afternoon to stand in solidarity with Israel.
And then at the same time, we've got the other problems, like Lord Cameron, for instance, has warned that Britain will carry out more strikes in Yemen, if they have to protect the future of international shipping.
Yeah, the Foreign Secretary has warned that if the Houthi rebels continue to target merchant ships in the Red Sea, well, no surprise here, prices will go up in Britain and around the globe.
He said the UK will always defend the freedom of navigation.
Well, joint British and American airstrikes targeted Houthi positions in the early hours of Friday after weeks of rebel attacks on trade ships in the region and, indeed, prompted, you could say, by attacks on UK and US warships.
Well, joining us now in the studio is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. Lovely to see you. Yeah, this is interesting, isn't it? Because the government, and particularly Lord Cameron, is saying time and again, we took this action in retaliation because we were being attacked. And yet there are still lots of MPs who think that it should have been debated in the House before any action was taken.
Well, yeah, and this is the big debate that's going on at the moment. The Lib Dems have said that the House of Commons should have been recalled immediately on Sunday night before the strikes took place. And interestingly, Labour is split on this issue. That is going to be a big problem for Keir Starmer going forwards. Keir Starmer is completely behind the government. He agrees that strikes should have gone ahead immediately for the sake of defending international shipping. That is a huge, huge shipping route. 15% of all the world's trade goes through the Red Sea, and now 20% of it is having to avoid that route altogether, going around the tip of Africa instead. So Keir Starmer agrees with the Prime Minister that action needed to be taken straight away.
And he was consulted.
And he was consulted. He was given a briefing before it happened. But his backbenchers on the left of the Labour Party, on the whole, are not on side. And to me, that shows what an issue Keir Starmer has on foreign policy generally. We saw the same thing with his backbenchers calling for a ceasefire. He managed to sort of contain that rebellion at the last minute, but he did lose a shadow minister over it. And on this, again, his left-wing backbenchers simply aren't on side. We think of the Labour Party as being pretty united these days. Jeremy Corbyn, no longer an MP. Diane Abbott, no longer an MP. Keir Starmer very much has his own people in his own political mould around him in the shadow cabinet. And on domestic issues, the peace is mostly kept. But on foreign affairs, there is still this very deep split in the Labour Party. And as David Cameron seems to be warning today, it is quite likely that there will be future strikes. And how will that play out in Parliament will be very interesting.
It does beg the question, on an issue like this, where you're looking at these retaliatory strikes on specific targets, you know, to degrade what the Houthis can do. You debate it in Parliament for a day. Well, oddly enough, the Houthis are going to know about it, and Iran's going to know about it, and things are going to move.
Well, that is very much what Rishi Sunak has told his MPs and backbenchers. And actually, most of the House of Commons do seem to understand that, do seem to be behind that. It is
basic,
on the whole, the Lib Dems are not very many MPs in the Lib Dems, and then also a handful of sort of left-wing Labour backbenchers and some independents. But some of those Labour left-wing backbenchers are quite influential in the party. Zara Sultana, the MP for Coventry South, I think it is. She's a young MP. She has quite a lot of support among those sort of Corbynite MPs, if you like, on the left of the party. It's just a reminder, really, that Labour isn't quite as united as Keir Starmer would like to present.
No, and yet it is an election year. So if they're going to go out trying to get votes, it's a very easy way to point at them is just to ask them about this sort of, about Gaza and particularly about these strikes against Yemen. It's a very easy way to just show up the divisions in the party.
Well, exactly.
And divided parties don't usually get elected.
Divided parties don't get elected. I think... yeah, we all sort of think that it's kind of in the bag for Keir Starmer with an election at the end of this year. But it is easy to forget just how divided the Labour Party are, not just on the issue of Israel and Gaza specifically, but on so many issues pertaining to foreign affairs. That left of the party, that Corbynite wing of the party, is still very much present in the Labour Party. Keir Starmer might have hushed it up for the time being, and a few MPs might have gone, but those foreign affairs issues, the Blairite view and the Corbynite view, could not be more different, and I think that will show up more and more in the lead up to this election.
OK. Olivia, thanks very much indeed. Well, let's talk to military historian and defence analyst Chris Newton, who joins us now. And Chris, can I start with this 100-day anniversary of what we saw on October the 7th in Israel? What's your assessment of what we've seen over the last 100 days in terms of tactics, in terms of outcome?
Good morning. Yes, 100 days of war, and what we've seen is essentially Israel kind of swiftly moving into initially the northern Gaza Strip, and they've been conducting clearing operations, which they had largely finished towards the end of the last month, and now they're focusing on the south, in particular Khan Yunis, which is a Hamas stronghold, and also they're conducting clearing operations in the central Gaza Strip as well. So the Israelis have been conducting these operations and finding it kind of a bit more difficult in the south and in the centre than they have in the north. Hamas is and various other militia fighters, they keep resisting. They have learned, they've employed more sophisticated tactics such as different staged ambush tactics, and the Israelis have been issuing kind of have been sort of conducting sort of airstrikes and using different means, different combined arms in order to locate tunnels, different kind of military infrastructure as well.
Why do you think Lord Cameron went to the extent of warning the Houthis that we will strike again if we need to, and also sort of spelt out the fact that already the cost of certain goods is going to go up. Already it's going up because of the conflicts that are happening in the Red Sea. Why do you think he actually went to the point of saying that and therefore creating front-page headlines in the papers?
Yes, both the strikes and the rhetorics that follows are part of signalling, the part of, indicating to the Houthis that the British still have the will to conduct strikes if they continue to attack container shipping and merchant shipping. So this is part of, part of the messaging that accompanies a kinetic strike. I mean, the strikes that were conducted Thursday night, Friday morning were limited strikes. They they were aimed at degrading Houthi military infrastructure and launch missiles and launch sites and so forth. So they're not going to completely destroy the military capabilities in order to carry out further attacks on shipping. So the British and the Americans have to, and various other allies, still have to continue to signal to the Houthis and to Iran, which is their sponsors, that we are still, we have the option to strike again if these attacks continue, and hopefully the aim is to kind of deter the Houthis into mounting the kind of attack that we saw on the 11th of January. Where there were extensive use of 18 drones and also three missiles.
What does any of this mean to Iran, do we think? Because they're the power behind the Houthis as in so many respects. Will they be taking any notice of this?
Yeah, I mean, the message is aimed at the Houthis, but is also ultimately aimed at Iran, which supplies the Houthis with the weapons and also has provided the intelligence in the Red Sea and the Gulf of Aden as well. So this is ultimately aimed at Iran as well. And Iran has, they've got a choice. They can continue to escalate, and there's different options which they could issue there, not just vertically but also horizontally. Do they escalate in other domains? For example, in attacks attacks in Iraq, militia attacks. They're sponsored. Their militia attacks in Iraq and Syria. Maybe even non-kinetic escalation as well, in terms of maybe cyber attacks or so forth. Or do they kind of dial down kind of the Houthi attacks in response to the strikes on Friday morning?
Do you think the Houthi rebels would take any notice of what we're saying, that, you know, strikes will go on if you keep on your behaviour? Do you think they listen at all?
I mean, that's a good question. I mean, I think the most important element in their calculation is, you know, how much damage that was inflicted by the strikes. That's what's ultimately, you know, was going to feature in their calculation more than anything. I still think the Houthis obviously will still want to seek to show that they're capable of attacking merchant shipping, but hopefully, you know, the strikes have indicated that if they continue to attack on the scale on the 11th of January, that they'll continue to receive damage from the United States and the UK.
Oh, okay. Chris, good to get your analysis, as always. Thanks very much indeed.
Yeah, and as you said, it is rather depressing, isn't it? 100 days.
You know, it's thoroughly depressing. The whole thing that's going on, and just...
And also because you cannot see a way out.
No.
It seems to be just one of those impossible situations.
OK, it's 16 minutes past 7. Let's have a look at some of the other stories heading into the newsroom this morning.
Around 150 migrants have been intercepted in the Channel, ending the extended pause in crossings. They are, in fact, the first to make the treacherous journey since the 16th of December, the longest period without any migrant arrivals for almost 4 years. It's thought that bad weather may have prevented people even trying.
There's been an election in Taiwan and voters have chosen again pro-sovereignty party, and their candidate, William Lai, is their new president, cementing a desire to keep independent from China. It's the third term for the pro-sovereignty Democratic Progressive Party. It's governed Taiwan for 8 years. The result, not surprisingly, angering Beijing, which issued a statement insisting that Taiwan is part of China.
And a League One football match was abandoned last night after around 1,000 Reading home fans invaded the pitch. The start of the game was interrupted for 3 minutes when they threw tennis balls onto the pitch, and the referee then had to take players off after 16 minutes, as home fans then took to the field themselves, with some letting off flares.
Now, history will be made later on today when Denmark's longest-serving head of state will abdicate, handing the throne to her son.
She's Queen Margrethe II, pardon me, and she's the first Danish monarch in 900 years to abdicate. She's been on the throne for 51 years.
Well, our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has all the details.
I've decided that now is the right time. On the 14th of January 2024, 52 years after I succeeded my beloved father, I will step down as Queen of Denmark.
Denmark's 83-year-old Queen's shock announcement took millions of Danes by surprise. For the first time in 900 years of Danish history, the monarch will abdicate after half a century as the country's longest-serving head of state. Queen Margrethe and Queen Elizabeth were distant cousins, both descending from Queen Victoria. And in 2022, she welcomed our future Queen, Princess Catherine, to the royal palace, who was on a fact-finding mission for her early years' work.
It's wonderful to see them when it's on stage and to see them using the costumes and the scenery that I've designed.
Queen Margrethe is admired for her tactile and creative personality.
We really like what she stands for, how she represents Denmark. It's really nice to see that it goes beyond the politics and so on.
But recent years have not been smooth sailing. Her Majesty removed the Prince and Princess titles from her grandchildren born to her second son. She hoped it would help them shape their own lives without the pressure of royal titles. But the spare wasn't happy. Prince Joachim publicly spoke out against his mother's decision. Remind you of anyone? It's not just Prince Harry who's talked about family dramas. In February, the Queen had extensive surgery on her back. Her long period of recovery meant her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik, took on her duties. Today, he does so permanently as Denmark's new king. His wife and new queen, Australian-born Princess Mary, has thrilled Aussies down under.
What a great ambassador for Australia.
Proud of her. Yeah,
Terrific,
it's lovely.
terrific
yeah.
news.
She deserves it. She's lovely.
carries herself extremely well. I'm very proud. I'm very excited. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I think she'll make a great queen.
At 18, Prince Christian will become Denmark's heir to the throne, taking over his father's role as the Crown Prince. Prince Frederik will ascend the throne this afternoon after his mother signs a declaration of her abdication. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, let's bring in royal correspondent and writer Michael Cole. Good morning, Michael. This is fascinating because for many, many years we were all speculating whether Queen Elizabeth would ever do this, abdicate, and she never did. She kept on till the very end. But Queen Margrethe clearly just sees it as a job. She wants a bit of retirement.
Yes, a great and glorious day, of course, ahead of us in Copenhagen when it gets started with carriage processions, royal salutes, marching soldiers and bands playing. It will be a great day. And as you say, and Cameron just made the point, it is quite rare in Denmark for an abdication to take place. Of course, we've had one much more recently, abdication of King Edward VIII on the 10th of December 1936, which, of course, inevitably meant that the Queen would become Queen, the late Queen, Queen Elizabeth II, because her father then had to take over from the abdicating Edward VIII. It's a wonderful thing that's going to happen today because the succession happens when Queen Margrethe II progresses to the Christiansborg Palace, which is the centre of power in Denmark, and she signs the declaration of abdication. And then the new king is proclaimed from the balcony by the Prime Minister, Mette Frederiksen. Now, Mette Frederiksen said that when she was a young politician, she was anti-monarchy, but being in contact with the Queen over the many years that she has, she's become a monarchist and seen the value of it. And now you see Queen Margrethe, I had the pleasure of meeting her, and I have to tell you, she's an utterly charming person. She had a sort of charm, if people remember people from the past who we really liked, like Joyce Grenfell. She had that one lovely, almost slightly charming, goofy approach. I was the director of public affairs at Harrods, and we had a Danish promotion on, and she came to open it, so I had to meet her. And I said to her, Your Majesty, I'm afraid I have to tell you, you cannot smoke in the store, because she was a chain smoker. And she said to me, oh, that's all right, I know. She said, but I don't mind because I owe everything to Harrods. And I said, do tell me how. She said, when I was at Cambridge studying archaeology, she said, I used to get on the train completely alone, no detective to guard me, anonymously, and I would go to King's Cross, get on the tube, the Piccadilly line, to Knightsbridge, and I would meet in the banking hall in Harrods my boyfriend, Henri, from the French embassy nearby, and we would meet there. That was our secret rendezvous. We got married, and Henri became Prince Frederik. He took a Danish name and Danish nationality. And of course, it's their son, Frederik, who is going to be, Frederick X, the new king today. So in a way, we've all got some connection with this great event. And of course, the abdicating queen was related to the British royal family. And interestingly, she will retain a role. She will be a regent when the king is abroad, because he's also the king of the Faroe Islands and Greenland. She will step in and then take over the role of monarch again. So it's going to be a very interesting new set of circumstances. And you see, you're not alone, Stephen, because the king also couldn't find a razor blade today. You saw his face fur there, and I don't think that's going to come off when he becomes king.
No, well, no one can tell him to. Unlike my mother, she won't be able to insist when he's the king. Mind you, he has got a little bit of a
reputation.
Yes, a bit of a party boy.
Well, there's been a few stories in the paper when he was in Spain, perhaps getting a bit too close to somebody who was rather female and attractive. I don't know the truth or otherwise of that, but it is interesting that the marriage to, and there we see Queen Mary, and that's an earlier day when they had their children. She, as has been said, Australian-born, but she has very strong Caledonian, Scottish roots as well. So we have a great interest in that. And of course, the Danish have a great interest in us. And it's always, whenever there's a poll of the happiest people in the world, Denmark always comes at the top. It's a very happy land. And the people there see the value of the monarchy. And they certainly adored Queen Margrethe, who's stepping down today. She had a great charm. And was universally popular. I think there was something like 73, 78%, something like this, approval rating for her. And she earned it over the years. She succeeded quite young. I remember on one occasion she had a terrible fall in public down a set of stairs. It really looked extremely painful. And I don't know whether that set up the back problem, but she had to have surgery. But she decided after 53 years, I think it was, that the younger generation should take over. But that, of course, is not the British tradition. As far as the House of Windsor is concerned, the abdication, the A word, is the no word, because they would say that caused all the problems they had. And the late Queen Mother would always tell you it was because of the abdication of 36, when an ill-prepared Duke of York had to take over as King George VI. The Queen Mother felt very strongly that hastened the death of her husband at a very early age. Of course, I think senior service cigarettes also played a big part, because lung cancer was what killed him. But that's not the tradition, because in this country, when you saw our coronation, the coronation of King Charles III, all of that stuff with the holy oil from the Mount of Olives in Jerusalem, the anointing, all of that, or the whole medieval thing, because the king, our king, was not making a contract with the prime minister or with the people. He was making a contract with God. The divine right of kings. That's what that was all about. And as far as they're concerned, the British monarchs don't break those vows made only to God, except in the case of Edward VIII.
Fascinating, isn't it? Absolutely amazing. Michael, lovely to talk to you as ever. Thank you. Love the story about Queen Margrethe meeting her boyfriend in Harrods.
Very nice.
Love it.
Yeah. Very nice. Most of us just meeting a calf in many Harrods. But nice, though. They are definitely more of the people, just in the sense that they don't have the same bodyguards or the same.
No.
You sort of get on with it a bit more.
That? Yeah.
Because it's a much smaller nation.
Yes, I suppose, yeah. But clearly they value their monarchy still.
Oh, yes.
And that's rather nice, isn't it?
Right. I hate to suggest we look at the weather because...
Well, we need to know.
We do need to know. Brace yourself. Here's Jonathan.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today. It brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight, a widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
Oh, I don't like the idea of temperatures plummeting. That's a very nasty word.
But you've got your electric blanket now.
Yes,
so you'll be all right. Get it on.
Toasty. Could do with it now, actually. Yeah. Do stick with us. We've got lots more to talk about. Sport and, of course, our headline makers coming up.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show.
Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else.
We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride.
Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse.
It's news, but it's this close to entertainment.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Right, I've upset the farmers.
Oh, why?
this
What have you
morning.
said?
Because I was saying I'm tired because I've done a lot of early starts.
Okay.
Now, look, I'm from farming stock, good northern farming stock. So, look, I'd say what you say seriously. Margot says, Stephen, you've only done a few days. We're up every morning at 4:30 to start feeding the cows and calves. And look, I know farmers have it hard. You do not get a day off. And that's even without cleaning out the slurry.
But you've got some sympathy from Steve in
Oh, right.
Cleethorpes. Hi. I know exactly how you feel. Back in the 80s, during the strikes, we spent many months, yes, months, getting up at 3 a.m. and doing 12 to 15-hour shifts.
Oh, that's hard. You're not getting enough sleep time. You're not getting enough downtime. But no, there you go. So,
No, Jo has also stuck up for you. She says, leave our presenter Stephen alone. He always looks smart and is part of the best presenting team on TV.
Oh, I see why you wanted to read that one out. Well, you're quite right.
Just, yeah,
quite right,
supportive
Jo.
of you.
But no, I'm all for Margot. She's, you hit the nail on the head. I know. What would me grandma say? She was a farming lass.
Yeah.
She'd tell me just to get on with it.
I tell you, one very good point about the post office scandal.
Oh, yeah.
John says it's all very well Ed Davey saying he was lied to by the post office numerous times, but if he'd actually taken the trouble to listen to Mr Bates just once and got his side of the story, maybe this disgraceful scandal could have been stopped then. And that's true because Mr Bates wrote to Ed Davey many times asking for an interview and never once got a reply.
Well, I'm not... Ed Davey in that interview was saying he did meet him once in that interview.
I wonder when.
But I don't know when. Didn't have any attention. Didn't listen to him enough.
No, clearly not.
So, yeah, that's what a good point.
Very good
John.
point.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Right, have we got... Yeah, I think we're going to talk to our Home and Security Editor, Mark White, who's on the line. What have you got for us, Mark?
Another significant tragedy unfolding in the English Channel overnight. GB News can confirm that at least 4 people have died after a rescue that took place off the French coast. Now, this happened around 1 a.m. Near the beach at Wimereux, which is just north of Boulogne. A migrant boat that had attempted to make the crossing got into difficulties, and lots of people thrown into the water there in the sea just off the coast. That sparked a huge maritime and land operation involving French border vessels, helicopters, and also fire and police crews on the beach there north of Boulogne. A number of people were pulled from the freezing waters, and we're told at this stage that 4 people have succumbed to their injuries. They've been reported dead at this time. Others have been taken for treatment for the effect of immersion into clearly severe cold water at this time of year. Now, this incident that unfolded, as I say, at 1 a.m. this morning is the second in just about 15 hours in that area. Another rescue took place in exactly the same spot yesterday. 2 migrants were rescued after they fell into the water off an overcrowded migrant boat in that area just north of Boulogne. That boat, though, the rest of the people on board refused the help of the French authorities, and it continued its journey to the UK, arriving in the UK yesterday afternoon with 68 migrants on board. 2 of them, as I say, were taken off and then taken to the hospital for treatment in France by French authorities. But the other 68, well, they continued and they made it to the UK. They were a group of at least 150 who GB News confirmed yesterday were the first migrants to arrive in the UK in 2024. We've had a break because of the horrific weather conditions in the English Channel for up to a month since the last boats came on the 16th of December. Well, now that the weather conditions have improved a little bit, we are seeing the net result of that, which is the people smugglers pushing these boats back out into the channel again, but in less than ideal conditions. I can say that our producer down in Kent at the moment is telling us that, you know, the winds are just borderline of what's possible, but clearly if you end up in the water, temperatures are freezing. The outside air temperatures actually even colder than the water. So another tragedy unfolding in the English Channel to add to quite a number of incidents that have unfolded in the English Channel in recent months and years.
OK, Mark, for now, Thanks very much indeed. Mark's going to keep us up to date.
I know there'll be some people listening and watching that not having much sympathy, but, you know, they were human beings.
Yeah,
And what a terrible, terrible thing. 1 o'clock in the morning, pitch black,
Freezing
and then
cold.
freezing water. Yeah.
Terrible. Terrible. OK, look, let's change tack, because we'll bring you more on that throughout the morning. Aidan McGee's here with a look at all the sport. Can we have a look, Aidan, at Manchester City? Because they're edging towards the top of the table at the minute.
I always remember an interview with the legendary Dutch defender Ronald Koeman back in 2016, and I interviewed him in January. Southampton team were doing very well. And I said, what are your targets for the rest of the season? Can you go all the way here? And he said, no, because the big clubs do what they do. And he said it in a kind of menacing way, because he played for big clubs, and this is Manchester City doing what they do. They'd kept in touch, Anne, in the first half of the season. They'd lost Erling Haaland, they've lost him for a bit longer, which we talked about yesterday. Kevin De Bruyne was injured in the Champions League final last June when City won the treble. He's coming back. And they just stayed in touch. No one was really talking about them. Everyone was talking about Arsenal, talking about Liverpool, they're talking about Aston Villa even. And Manchester City have crept up on the blind side. They stole that victory yesterday. I'm not saying they didn't deserve it, but they were given a tough examination by Newcastle United. Kevin De Bruyne has scored. And they're now level on points. So 2 points behind Liverpool, level matches, and it's all to play for. Still 18 matches to go. And when you've won 5 or 6 of the last 7 Premier League titles, why on earth wouldn't you fancy your chances of winning it again? They're still in the Champions League. Could they go somewhere towards repeating what they did last season? I certainly wouldn't be backing against them.
Can we talk tennis?
Absolutely.
Because it's the start of the Australian Open, and Novak Djokovic is there. During COVID, he didn't go. Well, he did go, tried to get in, but they sent him home again. What's he been saying? Because he's been giving an interview, hasn't he?
He has. I remember 2 years ago, I think it was in the first time us three worked together, it was right in the eye of the storm. Novak Djokovic was holed up in Melbourne, and he was subsequently deported, and he was on the verge then of becoming one of the... Well, I think he was just about to level the number of record number of Grand Slams with Djokovic with Nadal and Federer. He relinquished that opportunity by not getting vaccinated, and Nadal ended up winning and eventually going to 22 later in the year to 20. He's hit back by winning 4 Grand Slams. He's given an interview in the Sunday Times today saying that he felt like the villain of the world. Those are his words. And he said, I was never anti-vax. He still hasn't confirmed his kind of status as regards whether he's been vaccinated or not. Not officially. We can probably guess which way he went with it. But he said, I'm pro-freedom. This is the quote. I'm pro-freedom to choose what's right for you, what's going into your body. To be fair to him, he always stuck to his guns, didn't he? And he was even asked, were you prepared to sacrifice your position as arguably the greatest player in the world by not winning these slams? And he said, yes, absolutely, that's how strongly I felt about it. Yeah. And again, as I say, he lost that Australian Open against... Well, he didn't compete. Nadal went on to win it, winning in the final against Daniel Medvedev. Nadal backed that up with a win against... in the French Open, which he tends to dominate. And Federer was still around at the time. He hadn't announced his retirement. So he could have really slept back, but he then hit back and won those 4 Grand Slams. He starts today... he starts this morning, actually, 8 o'clock against Dino Prizmic, from Croatia. And I went back against him doing it again. And I think he's a divisive character.
He has somebody of very strong convictions, isn't he?
Absolutely, absolutely. And you know what?
Maybe you have to be that good.
Well, you do. I mean, early in his career, Federer used to refer to him as a bit of a baby. He didn't have the mental fortitude to close matches out, having won that first Grand Slam at the Australian Open back in 2008, I think it was, 2007. And it was that mental fortitude. He claims he learned it from the warfields where he grew up in Serbia. And that's where he got this kind of determination to fight back from adversity. And that was real adversity 2 years ago. It wasn't an injury, but it was him withdrawing from the competitions to say, I feel so strongly about this that I'm prepared to not win trophies anymore. But he still got back on the court and he still started winning.
Those top tennis players, I suppose a lot of top athletes, they're so... diet and nutrition is part of their absolute mantra. And you watch it when you see Andy Murray sitting at the side. He has one bite of a banana.
Yeah, well, he called a banana a pathetic fruit.
And then he has a swig of what looks like orange juice, and then he has a swig of water.
Yeah.
And nobody else in the world eats like that.
Federer was always very, very circumspect around his diet. The turning point for Djokovic from that 2008 maiden Grand Slam win was when in 2011 when he went gluten-free. He said that gave him flexibility in his body, and he won 3 Grand Slams out of 4 that year.
That's why he feels so strongly about you are what you eat.
Yes, exactly, and it's a solitary existence as well. And everything that goes inside your body can dictate how you perform in an individual sport. There's no hiding place as there would be. You know, if you're a bit off colour in football or rugby, you can. All right, it's difficult to hide, but you know you've got 10 other guys on the pitch who can maybe carry you over the line. But when you're accountable for every stroke you make in an individual sport, whether it be golf, tennis, darts, or snooker.
Yeah, no, fair point. Aidan, got to leave it there. We'll see you a little bit later on. Coming up, we've got headline makers, and we're going to be looking at how many pints have been drunk so far this month in dry January. I bet it's quite a lot. I'll tell you more in a minute.
Wake up to the headlines with headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. The Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
7:48. Let's have a quick look through the papers with Emma Wolfe and Stephanie Tetchy. Morning, you two.
Morning.
Can we, because we teased it, can we have a look at dry January? This is in the Sunday Express, Emma.
Yeah, well, there's been a booming start to the year. It seems that most people that decided to go alcohol-free at the start of the year, they've abandoned it. Not even halfway through. Pubs are booming. 200 million pints have been quaffed. I think about half each, sort of mostly at home, 110 million at home and then 90 million within pubs. The pubs are apparently laughing. They're having a great time, slashing their prices, 25% off a pint. The price of a pint.
That's good.
And people have just thought, I mean, I suppose with the cold and everything, people think, well, that's a good way to warm up.
Yes, a lot of ologists think it's a really bad month to try sort of giving something up.
Oh, I think it's
because
the best.
it's so bleak.
I'm day 14 of dry January, and I feel amazing. My sleep feels better, my thought process feels better. I don't feel sluggish. I'm hoping to actually do 6 months without alcohol.
Hang on a minute, I've done about 5 years without alcohol. I don't feel like better and more bouncing and more better.
Well, because I drink a lot at all these parties and stuff, so I'm just like, my body...
social life.
Yeah, my body's just grateful for the break.
What do you drink instead, then? If you're at these do's and you're offered something alcoholic, what do you have?
Sparkling water.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I just like a bit of the fizz and sparkling water. Last night, when I was at my auntie's birthday, I had non-alcoholic red wine, which just tasted like I was drinking Merlot.
Yeah, it's quite good, all this...
But I bet it's fattening, isn't it?
No, it's not. It's very low. It's low calorie.
Is it? Indeed?
Yes, because the calories are in the alcohol.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I do think it's a good month to give up, because I think it starts your year as you mean to go on.
I think it's good to prove to yourself that you can as well.
Yeah, I do think so. And also, you know, all the specialists say it's good to give your liver a break. So even if you are drinking in the week, it's always very important to have a couple of completely alcohol-free days. So this is obviously giving your liver a proper regeneration.
I hope so, and getting rid of my beer belly.
Tell us, Stephanie, about Cliff Richard, who is so squeaky clean and has been all his life.
Him as that, yeah, squeaky clean Cliff Richard. I just love him to bits. But he went against the grain of the rock and roll lifestyle. So back in the day, people like Led Zeppelin, Ozzy Osbourne, they were known for trashing their hotel rooms, throwing out televisions out of the window, which just doesn't make sense to me.
Pushing pianos into swimming pools.
Well, you couldn't do it these days with the hotel room windows that don't open.
Sounds crazy, but it sounds. I can imagine most of this was drug-fueled. But Cliff Richard said he'd done the opposite, and he used to clean the hotel rooms. And there's this lovely picture of him looking very fresh-faced, and he's just...
hanging up his socks.
Hanging up his socks. And I just loved that. I wish that more pop stars were like this, you know, instead of trashing hotel rooms. But
he actually cleaned them before he left.
He actually cleaned them before he left.
When you leave a hotel, I find it so... Oh, I haven't gone away for ages, but I find it so simple just to pull the duvet over the... Like, not tidy, I wouldn't clean, but I think it's so simple. Straighten to put... Because I've worked, you know, when I was a teenager, I've worked in hotels, I've done all that kind of chambermaiding, those kind of jobs. I think it's so simple to throw the towels all into the bath or whatever, push them all into the thingy, straighten the duvet on the bed, and just make sure that you haven't left, like, dishes and mugs.
It just shows a bit of respect for the chambermaid.
Because someone still has to come in and clean and change everything. But just leave it in a sort of decent state.
And I think it makes your departure more smoother, because then, you know, you've got everything. Where if the whole room's a mess, you're guaranteed to left something behind. Your head feels in a bit of a haze, and I just think it's just disrespectful. Like, I can't imagine these rock stars of yesterday. I think they must have been off their heads, clearly. But
and they were kids. I suppose that's the thing.
And they were
kids with money and booze.
They're off their heads. Someone else was running after them, probably checking that they had some trousers and pants and their suitcase and their whatever. I was going to say phones, but it was before phones.
Oh, before phones. Oh, well, good old Cliff. Tidy. Let's have a look at the weather, should we, before we have a look at the forecast with Jonathan, because the Daily Star Sunday saying it's going to hit -13.
It's so depressing. All I can say to this story is, if you thought last week was cold, ... And you've been hearing that from Nathan all morning, haven't you? I mean, this is vile. It's going to be colder than Iceland. There's a yellow government health warning in place, and as you say, temperatures are really sharply dropping further. We're talking minus figures pretty much across the country.
Plummeting.
It just makes me want to hibernate.
I think really does.
January, the whole of January so far, I've just wanted to stay in bed and just not do anything, and that's not like me.
I mean, I know we do need to be paying attention to the scientists who say we've got to be worried and all the rest of it, but all I've heard this year is that it's going to be the hottest year on record, and all I keep thinking is bring it on.
Me too, Stephen, me too.
Which is probably not the right attitude.
I know, it's not, but I just can't bear any more of this climate change stuff when you are freezing cold and it feels, you know...
My little doggy, we've got a cat flap, it's a cat flap, really, but she's small enough to go through it. She goes out into the garden when she chooses. She sticks her head out the cat flap, has a look around, and if she doesn't like the look of the weather at all, she just
comes back.
withdraws. Yeah, it's so funny.
I think lots of us feel like that.
I think we all feel like that. Yes.
Yeah, Timmy's doing that at the moment, meowing to go out. When you open the door, has a sniff. And then just wanders off again. And who can blame him?
Why should they go freeze that?
Well, I got almost a pet robin. I'm looking after my robin. I sent off for some robin food.
Oh, right.
And he's absolutely... I opened the window to scatter some of this seed, and he looked as though he was going to come in. So maybe he actually fancies coming in because it's warmer inside. I don't know.
Well, you
but
never
he's
know.
absolutely gorgeous.
Are they easy to look after, robins?
Well, I don't know, but I bought this robin food and I now scatter it just outside my French windows so that I can watch him. And he comes like that.
Isn't it funny?
Not scared
They do
at
have
all.
a bit of sort of... They do get into a routine, robins. Sometimes,
It's definitely the same one. It's not a sort of...
well, there you go.
The same one. It's definitely the same one, I can tell. I don't know how, but I can.
All right, Emma, Stephanie, thank you. We'll see you both a little bit later on. Let's see what the weather's going to do for you with Jonathan.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today. It brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight. A widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan, Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks, the admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News,
the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you.
Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months.
That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
to find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It's 8 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th of January. Today, some breaking news and another tragedy in the English Channel, as up to 4 migrants have died overnight as 2 more boats arrived in the early hours of this morning.
Global rallies and protests as Israel marks 100 days since Hamas's attack on them on October the 7th. The war between the two sides is now the longest and deadliest since Israel's establishment in 1948.
Well, meanwhile, tensions in the Red Sea are still high. Lord Cameron has warned the UK is ready to strike again if Houthi attacks on shipping vessels continue. Olivia Utley has the latest.
Yes, the Conservative government is standing firm and promising more strikes if necessary. Meanwhile, Labour is looking very divided. Find out more with me very soon.
And in Denmark, it's the end of an era as Queen Margrethe II abdicates today, making way for her son, the soon-to-be King Frederick X.
Got all your sport, of course, this morning. Aidan's going to be here.
Yes, indeed. Matters off the pitch dominated the day's football, with Reading's game in League One abandoned due to a fan protest. We'll have more on that later on. And we'll be looking ahead to a big day in both tennis and snooker.
And in about half an hour, we'll be discussing the biggest stories making headlines today with the wonderful Stephanie Tecci and the equally wonderful Emma Wolfe.
And if you can bear it, we've got your weather forecast as well with Jonathan Vautry.
If you thought it's been cold over recent days, be prepared for it to turn even colder as we see Arctic air sweep its way in from the north. Join me for the full forecast later on and the details of whether you will be seeing any snow.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
Well, let's start with some breaking news. And up to 4 migrants have drowned in another tragedy in the English Channel.
But 2 migrant boats arrived in UK waters in the early hours of this morning, with at least 100 people then brought to Dover by Border Force.
Let's get the latest from our Home and Security editor, Mark White. What can you tell us, Mark?
Well, 2 separate events to report, of course, that tragedy unfolding on the French side of the Channel and the confirmation that, yes, another 2 small migrant boats made it to UK waters and around 100 people have been taken to Dover this morning, on top of the at least 150 who made it to Dover yesterday. I think it goes to show that any time there is a break in the weather, despite what the UK government says about getting on top of the small boats crisis and making a meaningful difference here, actually the weather plays the biggest part. We've had impassable conditions for a month now, really since the 16th of December. Those conditions eased that Friday night into Saturday, and then we saw those arrivals yesterday. Well, last night there was a push off from this beach, Wimereux Beach, which is just north of Boulogne. That happened around about 1 a.m. this morning. Then apparently this boat got into difficulties, people thrown into the water. There was a full-scale search and rescue operation that swung into operation by the French. There was French naval and border force assets there, a naval helicopter, a fire rescue and police officers on the beach at Wimereux as well. As those people in the water, some made it to the shore themselves, others had to be rescued from the water. Now, one of the rescue coordinators has confirmed this morning that at least 4 people have lost their lives. They're described as young adults of Syrian and Iraqi origin. No more detail than that. Others who were in the water have been taken to hospital for treatment. We understand that one person was taken to hospital under cardiac arrest, clearly after being in the water for some time. Others that were on board the boat, and it's reported 71 other people were taken to a village hall in the Bordeaux area, so in the Boulogne area, I should say. So that gives you an indication of how many people were on this boat, 71, and we don't know if that includes those who subsequently died, but 71 on these boats is vastly overloaded. And when you're going into the channel with still winds gusting up to at least 9 or 10 knots, choppy conditions, freezing conditions, it is clearly a recipe for disaster.
OK. Mark, for now, thank you.
Absolutely terrible, isn't it? And it's a really sad anniversary today too, because today marks 100 days since the October the 7th massacre that saw Hamas kill 1,200 Israelis and take 240 as hostages.
Well, since then, we've seen 3 months of war in Gaza with heavy losses on both sides, including more than 24,000 casualties in Gaza. At least that's according to the Hamas-run health ministry.
But despite worldwide calls for a ceasefire, there seems to be no end in sight. Thousands are expected to attend a rally in London this afternoon, this time to stand in solidarity with Israel.
Well, meanwhile, Lord David Cameron has warned that Britain's prepared to carry out more strikes in Yemen to protect the future of international trade.
The Foreign Secretary warned that if the Houthi rebels continue to target merchant ships in the Red Sea, prices will go up in Britain and right across the globe.
Well, he said the UK will always defend the freedom of navigation.
Well, joining us now in the studio is our political correspondent, Olivia Utley. This is an extraordinary package of things that's going on in the world in which we are involved in some way, and yet this is election year.
It is election year. The Conservative government at the moment is looking very united on this. David Cameron has written a piece in The Telegraph this morning explaining the government's reasoning for carrying out these strikes. And essentially what he says is that all other options were looked at, but strikes were deemed the only responsible course of action because the shelling in the Red Sea has caused almost a complete cessation of some shipping routes. That is the biggest shipping route in the world, and ships were having to circumnavigate it, taking a much longer route around the top of Africa in order to avoid it. So the Conservative government is united on this. They went ahead with the strikes on Sunday evening. There are MPs, though, who disagree with that course of action. The Lib Dems say that Parliament should have been recalled on Sunday night before the strikes took place. Now, Labour's position on this is quite interesting because Keir Starmer has fully backed the government. He says that they were absolutely right to go ahead with these strikes. He was briefed about it before it happened. But there are a handful of left-wing MPs from the sort of Corbynite wing of the party who disagree with their leader and agree with the Lib Dems that Parliament should have been recalled. And it's quite interesting to see just what a problem really Keir Starmer has now when it comes to foreign policy. On domestic affairs, the Labour Party is looking pretty united, but on foreign affairs, from the shelling in the Red Sea to what's going on in Israel and Palestine, Keir Starmer, who's of the sort of Blairite mould, is in arch disagreement with those on the left of his party in the Corbynite mould. And I think that tension is going to become more and more obvious as we get closer and closer to the election.
But and likely to become more obvious if these strikes continue, because although Lord Cameron is sort of doing the necessary messaging to the Houthis and indeed to Iran as a result of all of this, what isn't clear is what they are going to do next.
Well, exactly. And David Cameron far from ruled out future strikes. In fact, he said that the UK would be prepared to strike again if necessary. These tensions don't look like they're going to abate anytime soon. In fact, they could well ratchet up as the war in Israel and Palestine gets ever more fraught. So this is very much a live situation, and it'll be so interesting to see how both parties deal with this in the lead up to the election. I would say that of all issues, Labour is now on its rockiest ground when talking about foreign affairs. On pretty much everything else, Keir Starmer has managed to find some sort of agreement within his party, or else just got rid of the rebels in his party who disagree with him. But on this, the left and the right of the Labour Party have always been totally disunited and will continue to be so.
OK, Olivia, thank you. We'll see you a little bit later on. Let's talk to Foreign Affairs analyst James Marlowe, who's also in the studio for us this morning. 100 days since October the 7th. Where are we, actually, in terms of what has been achieved in all of this? Because although there's been a degrading of some of the Hamas capabilities, this is far from over.
Stephen, 100 days since that massacre that Saturday morning, October the 7th, starting at 06:25 in the morning, where Palestinian Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, their supporters, their colleagues, and also, as we know now, some stringers for television networks around the world and some wire services as well, who was also seen on those motorbikes. They went into villages, they went into kibbutzim, they massacred 1,200 people. They raped, they dismembered, they beheaded, and they burnt these people. They took almost 250 hostages back to Gaza. And of course, it took some time for the Israelis to actually recognize what had taken place. I've heard some harrowing stories, watched the most horrendous video, which Hamas themselves actually, in most cases, recorded by their body cameras, watching exactly and uploading it to their Telegram channel. They've since taken it down, but that video has been available for people like myself to see and also to show it to journalists. What has been achieved since that time? Well, of course, Israel was eventually going to go into Gaza, which it did after the 8th or the 9th day. It has taken the whole of northern Gaza. It is fighting in the center of Gaza and also southern Gaza as well. Khan Yunis is believed to be the main point where, of course, the Hamas leadership and Sinwar, who leads the Hamas organization inside of Gaza, is holding up, along with 136 hostages, still women, still children. There is 1-year-old baby there, was taken when he was 9 months old. Banis is his name, Kafir Banis. And of course, now Israel is concerned that with the tunnels still available, remember there was 150 tunnels at least, which is bigger than the London Underground, 150 tunnels. The Israelis have actually shut down and blown up more than 300 shafts. The shafts are the ones that actually come up above from these tunnels, underneath mosques, underneath kindergartens, schools, hospitals, of course. But the Israelis are now worried that the hostages will be taken out through the tunnels into Egypt, and then from Egypt to get across to Libya. So they're trying right now to get a defense force along the border with Egypt and also inside the Egypt itself in cooperation with the Egyptians to stop this from happening, because this would be a disaster if they manage to get the Israelis. And we're talking about young girls at this point as well. And I have to just add that the testimony that has come from those women who have actually been released, it is just shocking. I'll just give you one example. They're held in some cases in houses, in homes. They're not actually all in the tunnels, on the underground tunnels. They're in bunkers in homes, of which the father is watching them eyeball to eyeball, 24/7. The wife comes in, brings tea, coffee, cake for the husband. Nothing whatsoever. For the kids come in and just push the girl, etc., hold out a bag of biscuits, and then as she takes it, because she's starving hungry, pulls it back. Her name was Maya, and she is still...
I mean, that's the whole business of Hamas, isn't it? It's to dehumanise Israelis.
Well, it's much more than that.
It's been generations of it, though.
But it's to do it again and again and again, a second and a third and a fourth time. And that's the reason why the objective, of course, of the Israelis is to get rid of Hamas.
But you can't get rid of Hamas.
Well,
I mean, that's the thing. You can degrade it, you can get rid of infrastructure. I mean, the argument is with this, and it's a valid argument, is the way this is being carried out now, and because of the huge numbers of civilian casualties, that actually what you do is you strengthen that ideology.
If you demilitarise Gaza, the whole of Gaza, which is the objective of the Israelis, then it makes no difference if somebody hates Israel. They don't have the ability to attack its citizens, to send suicide bombers, or which they have done since the signing of the Oslo Accords in 1993. That's more now than 30 years.
But it's not just demilitarising Gaza, is it? I mean, if you look at the pictures, Gaza's just been, well, northern Gaza at least, has just been razed to the ground. Yes, I know there are probably tunnels underground as well, but I mean, it's been destroyed, utterly destroyed.
Yes, but at the same token, Anne, it's very important to recognise that if there's no Islamists over there who are able to go ahead and cause this jihad against their neighbours, then you have in the Gulf many very wealthy multi-billionaires who are willing to go ahead and invest in a brand new Gaza for the people of Gaza, for the Palestinian citizens who wish to live side by side.
That's part of the plan, is it?
Absolutely, of course. You're not going to leave Gaza exactly how it is. These people would have invested in Gaza had Hamas and Islamic Jihad not been there. The whole idea when Ariel Sharon gave over Gaza to, well, actually pulled out, it was Ariel Sharon who pulled out of the, they had 21 what's known as Jewish communities or settlements outside of Gaza. It wasn't inside of Gaza, it was on the outskirts of Gaza, which was known as no man's land in 1967. The objective of to do that was to create the beginning of an independent state, the first ever state for the Palestinian Arabs, to see how they would run it. But of course, this is what's taking place. But if there was no Islamists, if there was a complete recalibrating and retuning the minds of the next generation to live side by side, then you've actually got the investment coming in to rebuild it and let them run their own infrastructure. And the objective of this government in Israel, led by Netanyahu, is that the Palestinians should have all the tools that they should have in order to run their own affairs, but none of the abilities to attack their neighbours, i.e. Israel, and none of those abilities to forge an alliance with hostile countries like Syria, like Iran and Yemen at this point.
OK. James, we've got to leave it there. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
Right, we'll move on. It's 16 minutes past 8. Now, history is going to be made later today when Denmark's longest-serving head of state is going to hand the throne over to her son.
Yeah, Queen Margrethe is the first Danish monarch to abdicate in 900 years.
Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker will tell you more.
I've decided that now is the right time. On the 14th of January 2024, 52 years after I succeeded my beloved father, I will step down as Queen of Denmark.
Denmark's 83-year-old Queen's shock announcement took millions of Danes by surprise. For the first time in 900 years of Danish history, the monarch will abdicate after half a century as the country's longest-serving head of state. Queen Margrethe and Queen Elizabeth were distant cousins, both descending from Queen Victoria. And in 2022, she welcomed our future Queen, Princess Catherine, to the Royal Palace, who was on a fact-finding mission for her early years' work.
It's wonderful to see them when it's on stage and to see them using the costumes and the scenery that I've designed.
Queen Margrethe is admired for her tactile and creative personality.
We really like what she stands for, how she represents Denmark. It's really nice to see that it goes beyond the politics and so on.
But recent years have not been smooth sailing. Her Majesty removed the Prince and Princess titles from her grandchildren born to her second son. She hoped it would help them shape their own lives without the pressure of royal titles. But the spare wasn't happy. Prince Joachim publicly spoke out against his mother's decision. Remind you of anyone? It's not just Prince Harry who's talked about family dramas. In February, the Queen had extensive surgery on her back. Her long period of recovery meant her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik, took on her duties. Today, he does so permanently as Denmark's new king. His wife and new queen, Australian-born Princess Mary, has thrilled Aussies down under.
What a great ambassador for Australia.
Proud of her. Yeah,
Terrific,
it's lovely.
terrific
yeah.
news.
She deserves it. She's lovely.
Carries herself extremely well.
I'm very proud. I'm very excited. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I think she'll make a great queen.
At 18, Prince Christian will become Denmark's heir to the throne, taking over his father's role as the Crown Prince. Prince Frederik will ascend the throne this afternoon after his mother signs a declaration of her abdication. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Just sort of girly observation.
Oh, go on.
I love the way she did her hair. So it was in a big sort of chignon behind there, and then the crown fits round it.
A chignon?
Chignon.
What's that?
That's what she was wearing.
Like a big bun?
Yeah, big bun. Yeah,
Oh, right.
exactly. But it was lovely the way that it was either a crown or a very, very big deal tiara she was wearing all the way around. The chignon.
Chignon. Oh, well, I was going to say I remember that, but I don't suppose I'll ever need to use it in
I doubt
conversation.
it.
Let's talk to royal commentator Richard Fitzwilliams, who is not sporting a chignon this morning. I mean, this is quite something, Richard, isn't it? I mean, look, historically it's quite something, but it's fascinating for us to see because it's related to, but very different from what we had last year.
Yes, absolutely, because this, in fact, Queen, rather similar to the Christmas message that the monarch gives in the afternoon of Christmas Day, and Queen Margaret Greta addresses the nation in New Year's Eve, and it was a shock that she was going to abdicate because she'd always said it was a job for life. As you mentioned, no Danish monarch has for 900 years. They go back to the 10th century. It's the oldest monarchy in Europe. And in fact, this essentially, she was talking about the problems she'd experienced with her back and her health and that she was slowing down. There were also those who believed that as Crown Prince Frederik is 55, it was basically an intention to keep the monarchy relatively young, because if she, for example, remained as queen another 10 or even longer years, it would have meant that he would have been clearly older. And then obviously there have been a certain number of rumours and speculations regarding his private life and possible problems in the marriage. So this, in fact, was something... She's always been pretty shrewd. She's been on the throne for 52 years. She was a colourful figure, chain-smoking at one time, and certainly artistic, unlike the sports-mad Crown Prince. She designs costumes and so forth, and there's no doubt, absolutely no doubt whatsoever, that she's managed to move with the monarchy, has moved with the times in Denmark. Enormous popularity ratings, which we would, I think, envy, over 80%, for example. And I think that this is probably a very well-timed change for whatever reason, or indeed possibly a mixture of reasons.
Yeah, I mean, you can't really criticise the soon-to-be King Frederik, can you, for having a sort of questionable private life at occasions? Because we've been there, haven't we, with our royal family?
I wondered where you were going there for a minute.
No, I wasn't going to say specifics, but you know, our royal family has been controversial from time to time, haven't they?
No, well, you're absolutely right. And in fact, I think Crown Prince Frederik, he's known as someone who's a great sports enthusiast. The Royal Run, for example, where he's got a large number of Danes fitter. He's keen on skiing and running and linked with the Olympics and so forth. But also Crown Princess Mary, I mean, Australian Scottish descent, very, very popular. The monarchy's ratings, I say, being tremendously high. And she's also championed LGBT issues and also her foundation helping bullying and those suffering from bullying and domestic abuse and so forth. So it's a tremendously popular monarchy. They haven't had a coronation as we would understand it since the 17th century, and then they stopped anointing in the 19th century. So this will be a stroke of the pen, and subsequently there'll be a levee, and then there'll be the Prime Minister, Social Democrat Mette Frederiksen, will present the King and Queen to the nation on the balcony of the very, very spectacular Christiansborg Palace. They live in Amaliensborg Palace in Copenhagen. There are several palaces, in fact, and I mean, they have a royal yacht, the Dannebrog. But again, the monarchy apparently costs only some 14 or so million pounds a year. So it is a different sort to ours, but it's quite interesting that the powers are rather similar. Head of the state church signing bills into law, they have to be countersigned by a minister, and, for example, the ambassador receiving ambassadors, trips abroad and so forth, and functions as head of state, but the Council of State will meet. Queen Margrethe, who remains has the title of Majesty, will abdicate, and then subsequently we'll have a new reign. And it's very interesting that so many monarchies are still so popular in Europe. Republicans can never understand it.
No, just a very brief word then about those sort of Nordic royal families, if you like, because could this set a bit of a precedent with an ageing population?
This is possible. I mean, we've had several, for example, Queens Wilhelmina, Juliana and Beatrix abdicated. It's not in the Constitution, but they chose to do it in the Netherlands. And then, of course, King Juan Carlos, though not in happy circumstances, in Spain, King Albert in Belgium, the Pope, of course. It's possible that, King Carl Gustav's reigned over 50 years now, King Harold of Norway over 30. It is possible, but again, I think it's a question of what suits each individual nation at a particular time. So you keep this flexible. You don't write it in the Constitution. I don't think that would be a good idea at all. Regarding our own situation, I mean, I think it's pretty unique. And of course, we've got the world's most high-profile monarchy. So as you mentioned, everything that happens in it is world news.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Richard, good to see you.
I think it's fascinating just because it's history, isn't it?
Yeah, history in the making.
Yeah. John from Skellingthorpe has been thinking about the Danish abdication, and he says, I bet you weren't aware that Gainsborough in Lincolnshire was once the capital city of both of the kingdoms of Denmark and England. And then Tim says, Denmark's Crown Princess Mary, who will shortly, later today, be Queen Mary of Denmark, well, she was born and raised in Tasmania, and she met Prince Frederick in Sydney. Her grandparents, who are the Donaldsons, were born in Scotland, and she regards Scotland as her hereditary homeland.
Oh, there you go.
It's history in the making.
It's lovely. Gainsborough, it was the capital of Denmark and England for 5 weeks.
Oh, it only lasted 5
weeks. Only in 1013.
Oh, that's a good trivia pursuit question, isn't it?
Isn't it just, yeah. They sort of call it the capital that never was.
Oh.
It's fascinating, isn't it? Anyway, look, whether you're in our capital of Gainsborough or in London...
Morning, Gainsborough.
Let's see what the weather's going to do for you today with Jonathan.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today. It brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight. A widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
Oh, we look so cheery about it.
Yeah. No, I'm looking at the food. The food section. The food sections in they'll cheer you up.
Oh, there you go.
Sunday papers. Yeah.
I'm on a diet though, so it doesn't really help.
Anyway. What a downer.
I know. We've got the sport heading away in just a moment with Aidan, so don't go anywhere.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train. Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa!
Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Curse, on the Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Jean's been in touch. Morning, Jean. She says, on the same theme as Anne's Robin,
oh, yes.
familiar Robin, I live in Blackpool. And for many years, I've had a seagull come for breakfast and dinner every day. He has a sachet of cat food every time, and I've called him Stephen.
Oh.
I wonder why you've called him Stephen. Oh, that's really nice.
Because he's a scavenger.
A lot of people are very anti-seagull, but if you live in the northwest or you're on the coast and you're used to them, I mean, I think they're lovely seagulls.
No, I do as well.
Big beasts.
Yeah. I mean, I know they can be a
Janine, I love
nuisance, a lot
that.
of them, but because they can eat your fish and chips and come swooping down after your ice lolly or your ice cream, don't
If
they?
you're hanging around long enough eating the chips, if it's taking you that long, you deserve to.
Yeah. True.
Get them down, yeah.
True. Speaking of food, here's Aidan McGee.
Oh,
Because we were threatening not to talk sport, but to talk cookery instead with you.
I know, yeah. Well, I've got a range of soups. I've got
soup.
one of them
Very
down
good.
to
Yeah.
under 200 calories, actually, per bowl. It's good.
What sort of soups?
I've got a vast
whole
array.
thing,
A vast array,
I think
yeah.
it's about time you
Too many
brought some
soups.
in for us again.
OK, I will.
Next weekend?
Yeah, I'll give you.
Yeah.
Is that all right with you, Stephen?
Yeah.
Yeah. Green pesto soup. I'll take the ham out of it so that you can have the vegetable.
Yeah, me too. Yeah. Green pesto soup.
Citrus with a hint of citrus.
Yeah, a hint of citrus.
I've got it down.
Hang on. Now we are
Oh,
talking.
here we
here.
go.
How do you turn a pesto into a soup?
Pour it in, mix it up. You will be astounded by the taste. I've had people tasting this stuff, and they go, "Aidan, can you make me a barrel load?" I went, "No, not tonight. I'm busy."
Well, I'm sorry, it's a promise next weekend.
Okay,
though.
I'll bring it in. No problem at all.
You have to use vegetarian pesto, though. I'm just
I've got low-fat pesto, so I'll work on it. I might just make my own.
Yeah.
Why are we looking? We're looking at pictures of your soup.
Oh, yes, they've still got these in the archive.
Wow, that's carrot and coriander
no,
or something.
that's chestnut.
Oh, that chestnut, that
yes,
was
we did
delicious.
try that.
We had
well
that.
over a year ago.
That was
so.
really lovely.
And what are you making in there?
That's the chestnut
one as well. Yes, being made. I don't know where these library pictures have come from.
I don't know. I'm very impressed if we managed to dig them out. There you go. Can we talk snooker? Because it's the Masters title tonight, isn't it? Ali Pali?
It is. Ronnie O'Sullivan, who we mentioned yesterday, he could extend his record. He's already won 8, I think, at the Masters. It's a good tournament for him. It's local to where he lives. He doesn't have to travel around too much. He seems to have the right mindset, even though yesterday he had a good old, or earlier in the week, he had a good old moan up, didn't he, about the Ali Pali and the state of it and how it made him feel sick. But he got through his semi-final yesterday against Sean Murphy. And he goes into the final tonight against Ali Carter, who beat Mark Allen yesterday. And he's 48 years old, Ronnie O'Sullivan. And everyone thinks, well, oh, yeah, OK, that's a bit late for a sportsman to be going into, to still be in his prime years. But in snooker, it's different. People think, well, it's only snooker. You have to walk around a table. It's not athletic. So you should be, in theory, be able to play until you're 85. It doesn't work like that. It's about your eyesight. It's about it's seeing the tip of the cue, connecting with the ball, and cue action is very, very important, particularly to Ronnie O'Sullivan. It's not about necessarily seeing the colours down the table or being colourblind or anything like that. It's about seeing the tip, and so he's doing very, very well. There aren't many. If you think about Steve Davis and Stephen Hendry, they began to drop off around about the mid-40s. Ronnie O'Sullivan's still going strong, and his hunt for trophies and championships is showing no sign of abating.
Yeah, well, there you go. Good on him. We better have a look at the Premier League, should we?
Yeah, Manchester City. Look, I said last hour, didn't I, that I never wrote them off. And the first half of the season, they always stayed in touch. Just 2 points off Liverpool now with that victory against Newcastle, having played the same number of games.
It was quite a match last night, though.
It was, yeah. The goal was scored by Oscar Bob. Not many Bobs who pop up and score winning goals in the Premier League anymore, especially not with the multinational makeup of the squads. Kevin De Bruyne came back. He's been back for a couple of games actually. He'd been injured since the Champions League final. Erling Haaland with his mouth guard, he was out as well. So they're doing it without their full complement of players. But if anyone can do this, Stephen, it's Manchester City. They've got the resources, they've got the players. And they always stayed in touch, and they're still fighting strongly on a number of competitions. And so I expect them to be strong. I expect them to overhaul Arsenal. I think it'll be them and Liverpool as we look ahead to the running. That's my prediction.
Well, there's 17 weeks left to go. So
18 matches, yeah.
Oh, 18 matches.
So, yeah, 20 gone. It's 38 in total, 20 have gone. So just over the halfway stage. As I say, they've kept in touch.
Everything to play for.
Absolutely.
Lovely, Aidan. Short but sweet. Thank you very much.
Good to see you both this weekend.
Go and organise your soup.
Absolutely. But be careful when you buy something, if it sort of says, you know, I don't know, Rockefeller Farm or something on it. It may not be. There may not be a Rockefeller Farm. Apparently, some supermarkets and certain other traders are making up names
farms
for, and they're to make them sound, you know, delicious and next door and friendly, when actually they're just made like any other.
Come from a warehouse in Felixstowe.
Yeah, it doesn't come from that farm or something. Anyway, we'll be finding out more about that with our headline makers. That's next. I think.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is Britain's news channel, and now you can support it. All you have to do is scan that QR code that's up on your screen right now, or you can go to gbnews.com/support and become a GB News member. You'll have fantastic benefits. We're also going to organise special events where you as GB News members can meet the presenters, the on-screen faces. Scan the QR code or go to gbnews.com/support. Thank you so much.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
8:41 morning to you. Let's go through the headlines today with writer and columnist Emma Wolfe and our favourite showbiz reporter Stephanie Tetchy. Good morning to you both. Stephanie, can we have a look at this? It's in the Sunday Mail, Mail on Sunday, I should say. Sort of do-gooders, if you like, on a plane who are persuaded to stop the deportation of someone who turns out to be a Jamaican gangster.
Yeah, I think obviously when it comes to the topic of deportation, it's a hot topic of contention. But this story is just absurd.
It shouldn't be. The man was a criminal.
It doesn't make any sense to me. He was here illegally. He has got 2 serious gun crime offences, a host of drug convictions. He literally shot at someone at broad daylight. He was set to be deported back to Jamaica, and these do-goodies, they stopped him by all standing up on the plane so the plane couldn't move, so he got saved from being deported. This was spearheaded by a Cambridge graduate called Hannah Gaffrey, and they had received advice from Detention Action, which is a left-wing human rights charity. And I just think this is such a foolish action, because that same man could potentially be holding a gun at you one day, and you would have saved him from leaving this country. You would have saved him, to remain in this country when he's clearly guilty of so many horrendous crimes.
And they didn't know that.
No, they didn't.
I mean, are these activists, so we're hearing so much about activists now, are they all balmy, or don't they do their research? I mean, what's going on?
Yeah, I mean, it's one thing standing up for the, the downtrodden and the, but I mean, this is absolutely ludicrous. We have to uphold the right of law, and it just seems like a very, very unwise thing to have done.
I think they just hear, for people like that, they hear so many cases of people who are being deported in more sad situations, and they think that it just cuts across the board in every single situation, and that's not the case. So you can imagine James Cleverly is furious about this, and the government is trying to examine new measures to stop passengers blocking deportation flights.
Yeah.
And to speed up removals.
It's surprising as well that they were on a kind of regular chartered flight. I would have thought that they would be in some kind of special, I don't know, special security measures or something. But the fact that this passenger was just on a flight with other passengers, it's quite alarming, actually.
It's just absolutely crackers, really. There's just no sense to it. Emma, what's all this about children can't learn to read on a screen?
This, I think, is a really, really important story. This is a former head teacher who's been writing in the Express saying that she's very, very concerned about the use of screens, the use of apps regularly in schools. It's something I feel incredibly strongly about. My 3-year-old will not be getting a phone, or at least a smartphone, or at least laptop and being online until, well, as long as I can delay it.
Yeah.
Lots of people with kids my age have their kids have iPads and tablets and all of that, and I'm a Luddite on this, and I want him to, be reading books and learning how to write and things. And this head teacher is saying, look, the constant use of screens and apps and online learning is, yes, there is a place for it. But when you're doing that in maths and English, pupils are simply not learning how to write with their as in handwriting. They're not learning how to spell. They're not learning how to actually the basic skills.
Is that an evolutionary thing, though? Is that what's happening to us?
Well, sadly, yes. But this is not. It isn't just as simple as a bit of online learning. Of course, that's good. But when you actually have fun maths apps, which are just kind of whizzy and colourful and all of that, children love that so much more. They don't need to then actually learn to write with their hands, Stephen. You have a generation of children who will not be able to read and write because they don't need to.
But my issue is with that, and look, and don't get me wrong, I'm with you on that. I like to write and textures of books and all the rest of it. But are we heading towards, within the next 100 years, people who will never need to know how to write?
That's incredibly sad to me.
I don't write very much, actually.
I know. I was going to say, I bet we've all noticed, the fact that when you're writing, handwriting, which I still do, and I'm a writer, you feel kind of, why isn't it completing...
It feels clunky.
Do you ever feel it's not completing my word, it's not doing predictive text? Weird things like that, because we're so used to just typing with our thumbs. But also other things like, my great aunt is Virginia Woolf. I love looking at her manuscripts and diaries and things like that. We won't have any of that archive from writers in the future.
I'll tell you what, in terms of
we
learning...
will never have those handwritten...
Learning off screen, though, what I struggle with... I mean, I couldn't read a book off a laptop screen or a phone screen or anything like that. It doesn't go into my brain in the same way.
No, and lots of people like me, I still prefer to read a book rather than a Kindle. Or
I don't know
whatever.
why that is. Why is it that it doesn't register?
Something physical about a book, being able to, for me, you kind of open it, turn the page down, better not turn the page down, but I do. Kind of have it beside you in bed, whereas when you're electronic, I often find that you're flipping between things.
Is it because you need to use multiple senses for stuff to register?
Or just that the screen isn't the same. It's not the same experience, is it?
No, I mean, that's why they had trouble when they first brought out the Kindle or whatever. And it was shiny and it was like reading off of your laptop.
Yeah.
And then they changed it to have a more matte look.
Yeah.
And they spent a lot of time studying that very thing, that people didn't like reading off a screen that was bright and white.
I don't like reading off a screen. I like physical papers, and I think we're just creating this zombie nation of kids who are just going to be behind the screen, just constantly just absorbing information there. But they are learning earlier, like they are picking up things earlier thanks to computers and laptops and phones and stuff, more than my generation did. So there are...
handwriting.
Oh, here we go.
Actually,
that's not bad.
Actually, that's quite nice, But I used to have lovely handwriting, but I haven't anymore because I just don't write.
Yeah, I mean... and
type, but
it's the
don't I?
YouGov survey. It's not just me saying, oh, this is bad. YouGov survey estimates 2 million children are behind in talking, because I think the pandemic and lockdown has massively impacted their social skills, but also understanding words, knowing how to spell things, because they don't need to spell, and literally handwriting, as we were saying.
But this all comes down to parents. I do believe it's up to parents to say, you know what, as you're saying, you're not going to have a phone, you're going to spend time reading and writing. So I do think it's the parents who need to establish the law for their kids.
Well, yeah.
It's very hard to fight against it, though, when they're getting all this in nurseries.
But when I was a kid, it was a matter of... I mean, you were taught at school to have perfect handwriting, and it was a matter of pride. And then if you wanted to learn to type, you had to learn to type. You had to have typing lessons. My kids just self-taught and type faster than I do.
Yeah,
it's weird. Maybe we will become a society.
But also watching a little one, like a 2 or 3 year old, on a screen, they know how to do everything. They swipe and all these things that, do you remember at the beginning, we had to learn. You know, they're very
The thing that
instinctive with them.
irritates me is when adults send me texts with slang. That I think there's no excuses when they say, like, thanks, like THX and stuff like that. I find that quite gets on my nerves.
I'll bear that in mind. Stephanie, tell me why I should never buy my cheese from the Tetchy Creamery.
I think you should one day. But the thing is, you know, when it comes to shopping now, like consumers, we like that transparency when it comes to buying foods. But now ministers are under pressure because they're trying to ban supermarkets from hoodwinking consumers. So, for instance, you could be getting your groceries and it says it's from Dixon Farms. So people think, oh, this is an organic British supplier. Well, that's just a made-up name, and they're saying that basically by doing that, you could be actually not be getting your food from a British supplier. It could be coming from Morocco, it could be coming from Chile. Like in this article I read, it says Tesco has 8 farms that it uses on their branding, which is totally made up.
They don't exist.
No, they don't exist, and I think there does need to be that transparency when you are buying your
That's
food.
outrageous. You do get a sense that it comes from somewhere homegrown. When it says something farm. You feel like you're supporting farmers.
But is that not just plain old marketing?
Of course. I mean, they can call... One would have thought they can call it what they want. Anyone can use any name that they want.
You just see, like, a picturesque farm on the front of some veggies and you think, OK, yeah, that's going to be a good investment. And no, it's not.
My corner shop stocks Happy Eggs.
Oh, yes, Happy Eggs.
Yeah, I've got no idea at all whether or not the chickens that actually lay are happy.
To be fair, with Happy Eggs, they do say, you know, our hens are treated nicely and free range and all that sort of thing.
Yeah, do you believe that?
Yes, I do, because I mean, we buy Happy Eggs, actually, but it's because they do... I mean,
they're bona fide.
I don't know how much checking there is on any of this. I mean, organic stuff, it can be 98% non-organic and then a little bit of organic.
Just seeing that one word organic, you think, yeah, I'm buying the right product.
Can be
I don't buy the organic stuff.
No?
No, because it's more expensive.
Oh, but it's better for you.
Is it?
It's organic.
There you go. You see, I'm not convinced.
Just to visit Happy Eggs, it says here on the Happy Egg website, the Happy Eggs are produced to the British Lion Code of Practice. And that's it. Maybe no more than that, particularly.
I remember a brand years ago, really, when I was a child, and it was like Happy Shopper or something. It's about sort of
Happy Shopper.
It was like 8p for like a can of beans. It was really like basic. It was
happy.
the basic. You would be.
You would be happy, yeah.
You couldn't get anything for that nowadays.
I remember
Super
Happy
cheap.
Shoppers.
Yeah.
How long have we got? Let's have a look. I can't imagine you being a big EastEnders fan.
No, I don't watch television. I don't watch television.
Do you not watch any television?
No, we don't own a television. No, don't.
But hold on a minute.
Hang on, you're on the telly.
Grew up without a telly, never, and I do telly now.
So you've never watched it. You've never had that experience, really.
No. I mean, I've gone to people's houses and seen a television.
But if you've never grown up with it,
no,
and you
I
don't
never
have one
watched
now.
EastEnders or Neighbours or anything like that. No.
Not one episode.
I mean, I've seen it.
Yeah.
I know it goes. Da, 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 da,
Yeah,
da.
that's all well
I
done.
wonder if that changes your outlook, because a lot of our time is spent talking about, what are you watching at the minute? What are you binging? What do you get sort of hooked into? Because you get drawn into these dramas.
I don't at all. No.
No, but that's interesting, because it was your life experience. It's actually probably quite different to most other people's.
I think it was different at school. I remember everybody rushing home from school to watch Neighbours, 5:35, and we just didn't. We just literally went home, me and my brothers and sisters, and didn't have a television. So it was
Why
much
do you think
starker
your
when you were a
parents
kid.
decided that, not to have
Mum
a
and
TV
Dad,
at home?
Because we grew up in a house of books, publishers, writers. That was it.
What about your kids then now?
No, absolutely no way are we having a telly. Ludo will not have a telly, and
We were very friendly with a family who would not have a telly and always sort of boasted that their sons didn't watch television.
Yeah.
They used to come round to my house and watch it.
Yeah, and if my little one sees a screen, he's completely entranced.
Yeah.
So I'm not, I know he's going to see bits of YouTube and whatever, but no, I don't want a world where...
So you haven't seen this new drama that's actually made a real difference about the post office scandal?
No, I do want to watch that, though, and you can watch ITV online, and I do want to watch that because I think it's interesting. But I've also read acres of newsprint about it, which people who watch the drama have.
But the drama was brilliant.
Yeah, no, it does sound wonderful. And I love Toby Jones.
Yeah.
He's a great actor.
Yeah.
Oh, well, on that bombshell, we haven't actually got time to talk about Patsy Palmer coming back as Bianca Jackson, but there you go.
This spring.
She is.
Ricky!
We're out of time, ladies. Thank you.
Thank
Here's
you,
the weather.
guys. Thank you.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today. It brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south. But underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet overnight, a widespread frost developing even in towns and cities. The risk of icy stretches for Northern Ireland, Northern Scotland, where those snow showers will continue to persist, pushing in from the north. And then on Monday, we'll see that stream of showers continuing. We might see a few skirting across western Wales, southwest England, maybe a few into parts of Humberside and Norfolk as well. But further inland, widespread clear blue skies, a crisp winter's day, but feeling very cold. Most of us not seeing temperatures higher than 1 or 2 degrees Celsius. That northerly flow of air will be staying with us throughout the entirety of next week, so further cold weather is on the cards. Bye-bye.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning. After the British launched airstrikes on Houthi rebels in the Yemen, I'll be speaking to Defence Minister James Cartledge about what that means for Britain's role in the war in the Middle East. I'll also be speaking to Wes Streeting, the man hoping to be the next Health Secretary. Is Sir Keir Starmer trying to reintroduce the nanny state? And can they really reform the NHS? All that and more with me, Camilla Tominey, at 9:30 on Sunday morning.
Wake up to the headlines with Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. We treat you to the day's biggest stories before anyone else, 7 days a week. You can catch up on everything you need to know before you've even had your kippers. Headliners every morning at 5 a.m. only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my 2 comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Now then, Lee Anderson here. Join me on GB News on my show, The Real World, every Friday at 7 p.m.
I'm not eating bloody cat. Are you
Delicious.
mental?
Open your mouth. OK, here comes a train.
Reminds me of the scene in Singing in the Rain.
Adam, is that a good one?
Whoa! Join me at 7 on GB News, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Have a great Saturday night with me, Leo Carson, this Saturday Night Showdown. It's a crazy world out there, so come and make fun of it with me, my panel of comedians, and a couple of people who actually know what they're talking about. This Saturday Night Showdown is your front row ticket to the clown show, every Saturday. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
GB News, unlike other broadcasters, isn't obsessed with the London-Westminster bubble. We think there's a nation beyond the M25, and that's why we talk about the issues that matter across the land. Join me on State of the Nation, 8 to 9 o'clock, Monday to Thursday, on GB News. Daisy's listening, and you should too.
Every Sunday from 11. Join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
When the news happens, it happens here.
And really important breaking news.
Breaking news this morning.
On TV, radio and online, the news starts here on Britain's Newsroom.
All the biggest stories and the answers that you need from across the UK and beyond.
Join Britain's Newsroom from 9:30 on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good morning to you. It is 9 o'clock on Sunday, the 14th of January. Today, some breaking news and another tragedy in the English Channel as 4 migrants have died overnight. 2 more boats have arrived in the early hours of this morning. Our Home and Security editor, Mark White, will keep us up to date.
Well, another 2 small boats are also currently attempting to make that crossing as weather conditions deteriorate. And in terms of the incident off Boulogne, there is still a search underway for anyone else missing. A 5th person has been taken to hospital under cardiac arrest.
Global rallies and protests as Israel marks 100 days since Hamas's attack on October the 7th. The war between the two sides is now the longest and deadliest since Israel's establishment in 1948.
Well, meanwhile, tensions in the Red Sea are still high. Lord Cameron warning the UK will strike again if Houthi attacks on shipping vessels continue.
And in Denmark, it's the end of an era as Queen Margrethe II abdicates today, making way for her son, the soon-to-be King Frederick X.
Got your weather coming up as well. Jonathan's got the details today.
If you thought it's been cold over recent days, be prepared for it to turn even colder as we see Arctic air sweep its way in from the north. Join me for the full forecast later on and the details of whether you will be seeing any snow.
Morning to you. I'm Stephen Dixon.
And I'm Anne Diamond, and this is Breakfast on GB News.
let's start with that breaking news then, and 4 migrants have died after their small boat capsized off the French coast in the early hours of this morning.
2 other migrant boats made it to the UK, and another 2, apparently, are also now attempting to cross.
Let's get the latest from our Home and Security Editor, Mark White. Morning, Mark.
Good morning. Yes, our Kent producer, who keeps well across all of the maritime activity in the English Channel for us, is telling us this morning that 2 more small boats are attempting that crossing just as the weather conditions are deteriorating again. We've had a month in which no small boats have been able to cross the English Channel, and then just a day and a bit of conditions that are borderline just passable, and the people smugglers have taken advantage of that, shoving these small boats into the English Channel in less than ideal conditions. There was a rescue incident yesterday, followed by this tragedy overnight. Now, that tragedy happened about 1 a.m. in the morning as a small boat was pushing off from a beach, Wimereux Beach, in just north of Boulogne. It got into difficulties. A number of migrants didn't make it onto the small boat, and a rescue operation was then launched. The maritime assets of the French Border Force, the Navy, helicopters and fire and police on the beach combed that area. They discovered 4 people who had succumbed to their injuries or the effects of the cold. They have been declared dead. A 5th migrant has been taken to hospital, suffering, we're told, a cardiac arrest, clearly in a very critical condition at this time, but no further update. And as I just mentioned a few seconds ago, this latest tragedy follows an incident yesterday in exactly the same stretch of beach where another small boat got into difficulties. 2 migrants in the water were rescued and taken to hospital for treatment, but the rest of the migrants, 68 people on board that boat, declined the help of the French Border Force and decided that they were going to head for the UK. They made it over into UK waters, and of course the routine is they're picked up by Border Force vessels, and those 68 people were taken to Dover. They were just some of 150 at least migrants who made it to the UK yesterday. And as you mentioned, Darren, in your introduction, it's still playing out in the English Channel as we speak. These 2 boats now trying to cross in less than ideal conditions, followed 2 boats that did cross about 5 this morning with at least 100 migrants.
It's absolutely astonishing, isn't it, that they keep doing it. They keep doing it. Mark, thank you very much indeed. I mean, yes, that for 4 we know have died, and yet there are still people lining up on the French beach to come over and to take the risk. Of course, they wouldn't know. Nobody would have told them that previous boats have sunk overnight.
Changed their mind?
Well, possibly not. You've paid a lot of money. You've risked all to be there and to have a place on that boat. So you're going to go ahead with it and believe that it's not going to happen to you.
Look, Mark's going to bring us more throughout the course of the day, of course. But today, actually, is the dreadful anniversary. It marks 100 days since the massacre on October the 7th that saw Hamas kill 1,200 Israelis and take nearly 250 hostage.
Well, since then, we've seen 3 months of war in Gaza with heavy losses on both sides, including more than 24,000 casualties in Gaza, that figure coming to us from the Hamas-run Health Ministry.
But despite worldwide calls for a ceasefire, well, from some quarters, that isn't universal, it has to be said. But at the moment, there seems no end in sight. And here on GB News, of course, we'll continue to bring you coverage throughout the day.
So joining us now, ahead of her programme coming up at 9:30, is GB News presenter Camilla Tominey. Camilla, what's in the programme today?
Good morning, guys. Well, of course, we're going to be covering the Houthi strikes. We're going to be speaking to Israel's official spokesman, Eylon Levy, about what that actually means for the conflict in the Middle East. I'm also going to be discussing those matters with Defence Minister James Cartledge. I think people watching and listening to GB News will be wanting to know, is Britain adequately equipped to go into this conflict in the Red Sea? We know there are problems with staffing our naval frigates, that we don't have enough sailors, and equally, people are going to be worried about the implications of these blockades in the Red Sea affecting prices in the UK. We've already been through a cost of living crisis over the course of the last year to 18 months. This disruption now in the Red Sea, near that Suez Canal, that very crucial part of the world where 12% of global produce come through those shipping lanes. Are they going to be affected? Are prices going to go up again? What's going to happen to the price of gas and fuel? So all of that will be of chief concern. Also going to be speaking to Mr. Levy about the conflict in Israel and this ongoing claim in The Hague by South Africa about whether Israel has been guilty of committing a genocide. I'd like to get his reaction to that. His reaction as well to Jeremy Corbyn appearing at that hearing at The Hague. Again, we've seen division on the streets of London this weekend, haven't we, with some seeming to support the Houthi action, and David Cameron's been doubling down on the British strikes in the Sunday Telegraph today, saying that we will be prepared to go further, we will do more. So as ever, it's been a very, very busy news weekend, and we're covering it all on the show.
Yeah, we look forward to that. Camilla, thanks very much indeed.
Now, we've been talking about it throughout the morning, and history is going to be made later today when Denmark's longest-serving head of state will hand the throne over to her son.
Yeah, Queen Margrethe II is the first Danish monarch in nearly 1,000 years who's going to abdicate.
Our royal correspondent Cameron Walker has the details.
I've decided that now is the right time. On the 14th of January 2024, 52 years after I succeeded my beloved father, I will step down as Queen of Denmark.
Denmark's 83-year-old Queen's shock announcement took millions of Danes by surprise. For the first time in 900 years of Danish history, the monarch will abdicate after half a century as the country's longest-serving head of state. Queen Margrethe and Queen Elizabeth were distant cousins, both descending from Queen Victoria. And in 2022, she welcomed our future queen, Princess Catherine, to the royal palace, who was on a fact-finding mission for her early years' work.
It's wonderful to see them when it's on stage and to see them using the costumes and the scenery that I've designed.
Queen Margrethe is admired for her tactile and creative personality.
We really like what she stands for, how she represents Denmark. It's really nice to see that it goes beyond the politics and so on.
But recent years have not been smooth sailing. Her Majesty removed the Prince and Princess titles from her grandchildren born to her second son. She hoped it would help them shape their own lives without the pressure of royal titles. But the spare wasn't happy. Prince Joachim publicly spoke out against his mother's decision. Remind you of anyone? It's not just Prince Harry who's talked about family dramas. In February, the Queen had extensive surgery on her back. Her long period of recovery meant her eldest son, Crown Prince Frederik, took on her duties. Today, he does so permanently as Denmark's new king. His wife and new queen, Australian-born Princess Mary, has thrilled Aussies down under.
What a great ambassador for Australia.
Proud of her. Yeah,
Terrific,
it's lovely.
terrific
news. She deserves it. And She's she lovely.
carries herself extremely well.
I'm very proud. I'm very excited. I think it's wonderful. Yeah. I think she'll make a great queen.
At 18, Prince Christian will become Denmark's heir to the throne, taking over his father's role as the Crown Prince. Prince Frederik will ascend the throne this afternoon after his mother signs a declaration of her abdication. Cameron Walker, GB News.
Well, let's talk to the editor-in-chief at Majesty Magazine, Ingrid Stewart. Ingrid, good to see you, as always. I mean, this is quite a day, isn't it? And actually quite interesting for us as Brits to see someone else do it, you know, the coronation, that is, but in a very different way to what we saw with King Charles.
It couldn't be more different if it tried. It's going to be surprisingly simple. It's going to be once Queen Margrethe has signed the abdication, the Prime Minister will announce from the Christiansborg Palace, which is the seat of the Parliament in Denmark, that Frederik is the new king and that Mary is the new queen. And then they will have a ceremonial drive through Copenhagen, but nothing remotely like the kind of historical ceremonies that we witnessed when Charles became king.
One wonders whether... Oops, sorry, something wrong with sound? It's doing a feedback loop thing, isn't it? Yes.
We've lost her. She's
we'll
gone.
have to say goodbye to Ingrid for the moment, see if we can sort it out.
Dear me.
Yeah, that sounded really weird, doesn't it?
We're under attack.
Yeah.
Very odd. By it could be.
But it's fascinating. Robert Hardman's book, which is serialised at the moment in the Mail and the Mail on Sunday, talks about the fact that when our Queen Elizabeth was getting much older and obviously showing signs of frailty, the Buckingham Palace, higher-ups, decided to have a few meetings about whether or not it was the time to make Prince Charles regent, so that he could step in and have the sort of status of the monarch as his mother was becoming older and more frail. Do we have Ingrid back? Well, let's see if we can... Hi there, Ingrid. I was just wondering...
Was that my fault or your fault?
No idea.
Yeah, it's not ours. But I was just wondering, seeing this sort of seamless abdication that's not going to cause problems. I mean, the last abdication we saw in Britain caused history to change, didn't it? Changed history. This is not. This is very straightforward, very matter of fact. I just wonder if it's going to make abdications more acceptable, and maybe other royal families, maybe even our own, will consider it at some stage.
I don't think so for a moment. I mean, the last abdication here created absolute pandemonium. That was, as we know, Edward VIII, who became the Duke of Windsor. And it's the most famous love story, which we still talk about today, that he gave up the throne for the woman he loved. But I just cannot see it happening here. In fact, the Danish people are not at all, they were absolutely astounded by Queen Margrethe announcing that she was going to abdicate. And according to the Sunday Times today, she only told her son 3 days before she made the announcement. So it wasn't something that, they discussed at great length. And I know for a fact that when he was Prince of Wales, Prince Charles did not want to ever broach the subject of an abdication with his mother, because he didn't want to consider it. And I don't think it will ever happen in this country. I think what we will see, though, is when William becomes king, which maybe Anne and I won't see, I don't know, maybe lots of people won't see, I don't believe that there will be a massive historical coronation ever again. I think we've probably seen the last of that.
Oh, well, I hope you're wrong on that one.
I hope you're wrong on that one too.
It's interesting because obviously we have all the anointings and things over here, and Charles, as his mother did before him, made a sort of vow to God to serve the country. Interesting, somewhat, which they don't do in Denmark or other Nordic countries, I believe, which maybe makes it a little bit easier. Linda's been in touch. I don't know if this is right. Probably is. Says Edward VIII abdicated before the coronation, so he didn't break a vow to God, which perhaps puts it in a sort of a bit more of a perspective as to why he did it, but we don't expect it ever to happen.
Well, I think that Edward VIII, he did abdicate before his coronation, but I think he broke a vow to his country by abdicating. He may not have broken a vow to God. I remember that the Queen Mother used to tell people that when she actually was anointed queen, and the holy oil was put on her forehead, she actually felt that it was, a really religious moment, which she never, ever forgot. And she did feel that she was being anointed by God.
It's this book. I don't know if you've had a chance to read any of the serialisation of Robert Hardman's book, but he tells how it was in the final days of the Queen's life. She worked. She did her red box that day, and put in two sealed letters, one for her private secretary and one for the now king. It's extraordinary. She wanted to work right until she dropped, really, didn't she?
Well, she did, yes. I mean, as we saw, she saw the outgoing Prime Minister Boris Johnson and the incoming Prime Minister Liz Truss. And also she had a house party that weekend. because some friends of mine were actually there. And on the Sunday night, she gave a sort of a traditional dinner party and was sitting at the table, very, very chatty, very animated, and very together. So I think that she really did live until her very last moments. And whether or not she was in pain, we don't know, but she must have been in pain because of the discomfort with her mobility issues and her back. But she chose to ignore that and just carry on until the very last moment.
Oh, wow. You see, honestly, she was incredible.
She really was, wasn't she?
Ingrid, good to see you.
Thank you.
You very much indeed. Just a quick one, because we're looking at, obviously, there's been tragedy in the Channel, but also the fact that boats are now heading back over again for the first time since, I think, the 16th of December. And a few people have emailed in saying, why do we call it the English Channel and not the French Channel?
We call it the English Channel. The
They
French call it
La Manche.
La Manche. Yeah.
The sleeve.
They do, and on French maps, it doesn't say English Channel, it says La Manche.
Yeah, I suppose we call it the English Channel because we're English.
Because we're English, yeah. We see it from our perspective, they see it from theirs.
Yeah, La Manche.
Yeah.
It's not very nice, is
the
it?
channel.
The sleeve, it means.
The sleeve, the channel, yeah.
It looks like a sleeve.
But it's interesting seeing those scenes of people, the migrants getting into the boats. The scene looks fairly calm there, but clearly when you're out in the middle of La Manche, the channel...
in the middle of the night?
Yes, in the middle of the night, in freezing cold temperatures. And, of course, there's still a lot of boats, big ships going up and down. It's a very dangerous place indeed. What's astonishing is that some people swim it, isn't it? Professional, proper swimmers.
Professional.
Extraordinary thing to swim the channel. It's a long way and it gets very choppy.
Yeah, it's hugely worrying, all of this. But this respite has been over, and despite the fact, whatever any politician might say about what's going on, it's been the weather that stopped it, and now the weather is ever so slightly better.
But not enough for a safe crossing.
It's terrible. Look, still to come, we're going to tell you about a volcano in southwest Iceland that has erupted this morning. We've got some amazing pictures coming in. We'll show you more in just a moment.
Your weekend starts here with Friday Night Live with me, Mark Dolan, 8 till 9 on GB News. Big stories, big guests and big laughs as we get you ready for a cracking weekend. That's Friday Night Live with Mark Dolan. Fridays 8 till 9 on GB News. Bring your own drinks. The admission's free.
In the GB Newsroom, we bring you the news as it happens. With our team of dedicated journalists across the UK, we're ready to give you accurate reporting every day. When the news breaks, we'll be there with bulletins on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it.
Headliners. You don't have to bother reading the newspaper. We've got it covered for you. Every night at 11 p.m. and repeated every morning at 5 a.m. We won't send you to sleep like some of the other paper review shows out there.
So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News.
The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Tired of the usual focus-tested, pre-prepared Westminster runaround? Well, so am I.
So you want higher taxes?
Is your department to blame for this? Are you rethinking this policy? Every Sunday at 9:30, I'll be sitting down with those in power to get the truth about the issues affecting you. Let's be honest, we've known about the cost pressures of this project for years, not months. That's the Camilla Tominey Show, a politics show with personality. On GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain. Join us, Tom and Emily,
To find out what's happening in the heart of Westminster.
and why it matters to you.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And from your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you.
GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Now, here's one for you, if you're watching us rather than listening to us, because we're getting these amazing pictures through of a volcano erupting in Southwest Ireland. So, if you are listening on the radio, you might want to check this out on the app a little bit later on. It's the 5th eruption on the Reykjanes Peninsula since 2021. It's absolutely...
Extraordinary pictures.
I mean, it's not a sort of explosive... sort of scene, if you like, but it just looks like pools
beds
of lava.
Yeah, and it's glowing white hot. It's not in the sea, is it? I can't quite see.
No, it's not, but it's near the coast.
Yeah.
It's just north of the fishing town of Grindavik, but it's not exactly. This is what they have to work out, because it is just sort of... So it looks like a pool of lava at the moment. They haven't been able to work out exactly what direction the lava is flowing in.
And that matters.
Oh, yeah, it does matter.
Yeah.
So, but it's a beautiful sight. And I always think things with like volcanoes are so destructive, but so beautiful. If you're far enough away from one to be able to appreciate it.
Yes, exactly. Not if your home is in its way. Thank you so much for getting in touch throughout the show. We've had some lovely messages about happy eggs, whether or not they are indeed happy.
In
fact, one couple who watch us actually worked for Happy Eggs and said, you know, that the hens are in fields, some 12,000, and you get lots of mixed sizes of the eggs as well, because they are basically free range.
You see, that's what it is. As good as you can make it, I think. But there you go. Look, thanks for all your views. Thanks for your company this morning. That is it from us. Camilla Tominey is here next in just a moment.
Hello there, good morning to you. I'm Jonathan Vautry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. If you thought it was cold over the last few days, it's about to get even colder. We're set to see a plunge of cold Arctic air sweep its way southwards across the UK, covering all areas over the next 24 hours. That is cold enough already to provide some snow showers to even low levels across northern areas of Scotland. Combine that with some very strong winds, severe gales for a time across Shetland today brings the risk of drifting snow. Do take care because some disruption is possible. For the southern half of the UK, there's a bit more cloud around, a few sunnier outbreaks to watch out for, but in that cloud we could see some outbreaks of light rain and drizzle. Temperatures here not as cold, generally between 6 and 8 degrees Celsius. As we head into the evening and overnight, though, that plunge of cold air is going to continue to sweep its way southwards, actually help clear out some of that cloud across the south, but underneath the clearing skies, temperatures are set to plummet over